Chapter 602. It was as if nothing had happened. In the afternoon, Fat Dragon continued to hang out with Kai Si-min, his soulmate whom he had finally found. Both of them were technically obsessed, but Fat Dragon was slightly more inclined towards writing programs, while Kai Si-min was slightly more inclined towards hardware. However, both of them were unwilling to admit defeat in their weakness, so they spent the whole afternoon arguing. Zheng Yujie was unhappy at noon. Although she had forgiven Fat Dragon, she still felt a little uncomfortable. She simply went for a walk with Kiki, who had just woken up, in the afternoon. She also brought along Gold, who could only tuck its tail between its legs in the Mung Stockade village. Poplar Fruit acted as if nothing had happened. He looked at Fat Dragon's progress for a while, and then looked at his daughter's innocent smiling face. Then he carried the two Meowdow that were half a person's height, and looked for a piece of wood to compete with. Tomorrow was Zheng Yujie's birthday. Logically speaking, he would celebrate it with Zheng Yujie tonight. However, with Poplar Fruit's skill, he might not be able to carve a cute rabbit even if he was given another week. Now the piece of wood in his hand was like that. Its long ears had fallen off twice, but he still persevered to fix the ears. As a result, the rabbit's head became a human shape. There was no other way. Zheng Yujie's birthday gift could only be made up later. Although he had told Zheng Yujie before, and the girl had said that she did not care, he had to admit that it was a pity. However, after Fat Dragon's words, did Poplar Fruit really not change? Yongguo's natural expression was just a facade he was putting on. Fatty Dragon's words had set off waves in his heart. Even when he was carving wood with the knife, he wasn't calm. He almost cut his own hand several times. This was rare for Yongguo, who could control all the muscles in his body. If Fat Dragon could see Poplar Fruit's inner world, or hear his inner monologue, then Fat Dragon would definitely hit his head against the wall. He would even have the thought of dying. Yes, Poplar Fruit did not fall in love with someone else because of Fat Dragon's words. This guy with low EQ even dug himself into a dead end. Zheng Yujie was so good to him that it was hard to find another girl who would be willing to sacrifice herself for Poplar Fruit. However, this could not be. In recent days, the uneasiness in Poplar Fruit's heart finally broke out. Poplar Fruit's EQ was not high, but he was very clear about what he wanted. When Lu Yunran was still Poplar Fruit's girlfriend, Poplar Fruit loved Lu Yunran deeply. Duan Shiweqing, a girl who was several times prettier than Lu Yunran, quietly became his confidant for 4 years. Poplar Fruit still only treated her as a junior who needed to be taken care of. If Kiki's incident had not happened, Poplar Fruit and Lu Yunran would have been an ordinary love story. With their characters, it would not be a problem for them to live a long life without illness or pain. However, Wu Yu accidentally broke in and changed Poplar Fruit's life. However, a leopard could not change its spots. Even after Poplar Fruit had a daughter, his personality was still so F***ket up. Yes, Xiaohan admitted that it was Xiaohan's initial setting that was F***ket up. Until now, Poplar Fruit still clearly understood what he pursued in love. That's right, he wasn't purely pursuing love anymore. As a father, he had to shoulder the responsibility of a father. Love and family could only complement each other. They couldn't become a conflict, because Chi-Chi couldn't afford to wait. Poplar Fruit's initial impression of Feng Beibei and Zheng Yujie were actually more or less the same. Feng Beibei was cute, kind and beautiful like a fairy. She was the pure dream of all boys. Guan Jujiu is in the river continent. A gentle and graceful lady is a gentleman's dream. Poplar Fruit was the same. When he saw Feng Beibei by the lake, his heart was moved. When Zheng Yujie first appeared, she had the appearance of a domineering older sister. She only lacked a whip to complete the transformation of a queen. Zheng Yujie, who was both beautiful and intelligent, had an ambiguous relationship with Poplar Fruit from the beginning. It would be a lie to say that Poplar Fruit was not moved. After all, Poplar Fruit was also a man. The change in his feelings for Feng Beibei happened when Poplar Fruit was tutoring Feng Beibei. Originally, it was just a feeling of love and could not help but want to interact more. However, because Feng Beibei was sincerely good to Kiki, and because Feng Beibei and Poplar Fruit spent a happy time together in the teacher's dormitory, Poplar Fruit truly understood his own heart. It was not just a feeling of love, it had turned into love. Before this, it was not impossible for Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie to be together. This possibility was even greater than Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei. It was a pity that Zheng Yujie had a younger brother who cheated his sister. Zheng Taiming successfully made Poplar Fruit mistakenly think that Zheng Yujie already had a fiancé, and Poplar Fruit wanted to build a complete family for Kiki, a family that was not so unstable. Therefore, the bud that had not yet sprouted was killed by Zheng Taiming's lie. When Zheng Yujie explained it clearly, it was already a bit too late. At that time, Poplar Fruit had already recognized Fang Beibei's existence. Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei were only left with a confession. Zheng Yujie's efforts, such as rushing to confess and forcefully kissing Poplar Fruit, were not useless. However, Poplar Fruit thought about it carefully and realized that his identity, not his birth, was an unmarried father. There was a huge conflict with Zheng Yujie's family. In addition, Poplar Fruit's accumulated guilt towards Zheng Yujie in his heart made Poplar Fruit rationally choose not to go deeper. Now Poplar Fruit himself had walked into a dead end. Fat Dragon's words woke him up from his dream. He was surprised to find that Zheng Yujie's love for him was not something that he could stop at will. And he seemed to like the feeling of being loved a little. Is he sure he was not secretly happy? This was not right. He and Fang Beibei were in the last step of becoming lovers, the so-called observation period that Fang Beibei mentioned. How could he fall in love with another woman? Poplar Fruit had never thought about having a dragon and 2 phoenixes, or giving up on both his left and right hands. The 2 women accepted it all. That was a web novel, but Yang Guo was facing reality. No one knew about Poplar Fruit's dilemma, and he walked to the other extreme in this dilemma. He could not go on like this. If Fat Dragon knew that he had made Poplar Fruit think it through, and that he was preparing to gradually draw a line between men and women with Zheng Yujie to ensure that friends could not cross the line, he would really apologize with his life. Who asked him to be so self-righteous? Of course, Poplar Fruit did not immediately draw a line. He would take note of Zheng Yujie's feelings. Because although it was impossible to be lovers, Poplar Fruit still cherished Zheng Yujie's existence as a friend. P.S. This chapter is an explanation. I see that many readers don't like Fang Beibei. Little Han wants to say that it's because they don't understand Fang Beibei. I haven't been paying enough attention to her recently. After all, Little Han's skills are not enough. PS2. Recently I read a good book, The Age of Literature and Art. Many readers might have read it, but Xiao Han would still recommend it here. It is really a good book. Although it is a rebirth, it is very realistic. It is not overly YY and will turn white in sleep. Xiao Han could not keep up with the writing. In addition, I really like the portrayal of Fan Bingbing in the novel. It brought the young Fan Bingbing to life. Highly recommended. Chapter 603. So rich. So domineering. Fat Dragon and Poplar Fruit walked side by side to Xiong Jisher's stilted house, sighing along the way. Just a moment ago, Poplar Fruit had placed a huge order of 1 million yuan with Kai Simin through Zheng Yujie. Since Fat Dragon had already verified the practicality and plasticity of Kai Simin's machines, Poplar Fruit decided not to drag it out any longer. He wanted to start building the basic framework for his long-distance education as soon as possible. Xiong village and the 2 neighboring Hmong villages had a total of 323 children who needed to go to primary school, excluding Xiong Xiaolin, and the others who were admitted to the county's junior high school. The computers, display screens, servers, and other equipment cost about 600,000 yuan. Poplar Fruit also asked Kai Simin to help buy other matching equipment, such as projector equipment, video equipment, and other materials that were enough to build a truly ultra-modern internet classroom. Therefore, Poplar Fruit gave Kai Simin 1 million yuan in advance. This was also based on his trust in Zheng Yujie. With the Zheng family in Beijing keeping an eye on Kai Simin, he wasn't afraid that Kai Simin would abscond with the money. Originally, Poplar Fruit wanted to buy suitable computer desks for the children. However, Xiong Kahu didn't allow any explanation from Poplar Fruit's extravagant spending. There were so many skilled craftsmen in the village. Usually, if there was a lack of furniture, wouldn't they come up with it themselves? Why would they need to buy it? Therefore, Xiongku asked Fat Dragon to find the design of a computer desk. He found someone to design and build it. Not only that, in order to match Poplar Fruit's long-distance education plan, Xiongku also ambitiously looked for the elders and the leaders of the other two villages to discuss. They were prepared to rebuild the original school. Even if they didn't rebuild it, they would do a large-scale renovation, redesign the circuit layout, and so on. Poplar Fruit also donated 200,000 yuan to them. However, this was all for later. After transferring so much money, Poplar Fruit checked his account and found that he was poor again. The money he earned from selling the game was squandered by him. After investing and donating, Yangguo's own account was only left with a little over 1 million yuan. It wasn't even enough to buy a house in Yangcheng. Looks like I have to start earning money again. Otherwise, I can't do anything. Poplar Fruit thought gloomily. Yangguo's plan was to end her vacation early. Starting tonight, she would pick up the translation that she had put aside for almost 2 months. Speaking of which, brother Yao Dahua had already complained about him several times. But when Yangguo gave him a training plan for interpreters, he disappeared without a trace. There was one more thing to prepare. That was the plan to open a publishing house that Yangguo talked to Zheng Yujie about in the morning. Although it was none of Yangguo's business how to open a publishing house, he planned to test the waters of online novel translation starting today. When everything was ready, Poplar Fruit planned to have enough stock. That way, when Zheng Yujie set up the canon of the publishing house, Poplar Fruit could provide her with ammunition. At night, everyone gathered in Poplar Fruit's house to celebrate Zheng Yujie's birthday. Everyone here referred to Poplar Fruit, Kiki, Xiong Xiaolin, and Xiong Xiaofeng. Fat Dragon was very self-aware. He ran over to Zheng Yujie and wished her well before running back to his room to play with his phone. Poplar Fruit felt a little shabby celebrating Zheng Yujie's birthday. The conflict with Liang Hua in the county in the morning ruined Poplar Fruit's plan. He didn't get to buy a birthday cake, so he could only use the rice cake made by Yi Yusong. I'm a year older now, but I still want to wish Sister Yujie to continue to be young and beautiful. 18 every year. Poplar Fruit smiled and handed the wooden pig carving that he showed to Zheng Yujie before to Zheng Yujie. In exchange, she looked at him. Zheng Yujie raised her head arrogantly and said, "Who said I'm a year older? It's my birthday and I only receive gifts. I'm not a year older." These words even rhymed. The children giggled, especially Xiong Xiaolin. She had a look of envy on her face, and she wished that she could also become an indomitable, manly woman like Sister Yujie. This gift doesn't count. Zheng Yujie shook the wooden carving that Poplar Fruit gave her and smiled meaningfully. Poplar Fruit nodded honestly and said, "I know this is just a substitute. After I learn it, I will definitely carve a rabbit for you. That rabbit is also a matter of the future. Today is my birthday. Don't you have anything to say?" Zheng Yujie blinked her eyes and began to be unreasonable again. "Then what do you want me to say?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and asked. He was really not prepared at all. I want you. No, you guys are too insincere." Zheng Yujie's eyes turned and she stretched out her white jade finger and pointed at Poplar Fruit. Then she swept a glance at the children who were watching the fun and said with a smile, "I want to punish all of you. Each of you will perform a performance, and you are not allowed to repeat it. And consider it as compensation for my birthday." Kiki was still there watching Aunt Zheng Yujie bully her father and giggled happily. In the end, her father picked her up and patted her little butt. He pretended to be angry and said, still laughing, "What's the use of having a daughter like you? You're helping an outsider. Hey, now you're asking for trouble, aren't you?" Aya. Kiki cutely covered her eyes with her hands and shyly shook her head and cried, "It's all Papa's fault." Auntie, don't blame Kiki, okay? However, how could Zheng Yujie let these little guys go? Poplar Fruit would not suffer by himself. He laughed and pulled these little guys into the water together. The performance was not allowed to be repeated. That is, if one person sang, then the people behind could only perform something else. After explaining the rules of the game, Poplar Fruit's face turned green. He did not have any artistic cells. Xiong Xiaofeng was the smartest. He pulled his sister to perform a meow dance first. Although there was no accompaniment and the two of them were still very inexperienced in dancing, they won because it was fresh. This was an eye-opener for Poplar Fruit and the others. Haha, not bad, not bad. Zheng Yujie laughed and gave them a thumbs up. I'll let it go this time. The next group is not allowed to be together and perform one by one. Zheng Yujie caught Poplar Fruit and Kiki, who wanted to follow suit and get away with it. Then I'll sing a song. Poplar Fruit took the first step. In front of the game, even if Kiki was his daughter, Poplar Fruit did not have any intention of giving in. Oh, Papa is so bad, don't. Chi-Chi also wants to sing. Chi-Chi pouted her small mouth and unrelentingly patted this big bad father's chest. No. Poplar Fruit held back his laughter and said seriously, if Papa sings a song, Kiki can only perform something else. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 604. Horses gallop south, people look north. A few rooms away, there was actually an impassioned singing coming through. Fat Dragon shook his head and put on his headphones. He clicked his tongue and said to himself, Poplar Fruit is singing again. What a tragedy. Why doesn't this child understand? Poplar Fruit shamelessly snatched the singing program from his daughter. Unfortunately, with his singing skills, he could only be reduced to noise. Being out of tune was not terrible. What was terrible was that Poplar Fruit did not know that he was out of tune. This song, Loyalty to the Country, was actually very high key. Poplar Fruit was not afraid of it. He was able to concentrate his chi in his dantian, and he could roar out any high key. However, Poplar Fruit's singing was not above that point. In the last 2 words, Poplar Fruit sang only 4 words. Fortunately, although Zheng Yujie was convulsing with laughter and did not care about her image, she still clapped for Poplar Fruit at the end. However, her red cheeks were obviously faking it. Poplar Fruit's face turned red. He knew his own situation. Although he could not tell, he could guess that it was easy for him to sing out of tune. Therefore, after singing, he quickly sat down. He pushed Kiki and said with a smile, Kiki, it's your turn. Kiki's pink little face was tight. She squeezed into her father's arms, played with his fingers and said, Kiki wants to sing. You can't sing. Your father has already sung. Zheng Yujie said with a smile. Kiki unhappily twisted her body and muttered, Papa, Kiki wants to sing. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, How about this, Kiki, you tell us a story. Tell us the story of the tortoise and the lion that you told me last time. A tortoise and a lion? Zheng Yujie asked curiously. Shouldn't it be a tortoise and a rabbit? She was thinking about the story of the tortoise and the rabbit. No. Poplar Fruit smiled. He nudged Kiki and looked at Kiki encouragingly. Hearing her father mention the tortoise and the lion, Kiki blinked her eyes. Her previous unhappy expression had faded. However, Kiki did not have the courage to stand up and tell a story in front of others. With her father's encouragement, Kiki finally shyly stood up from her father's arms. Once upon a time, there was a tortoise brother, Kiki said weakly. There is no past. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's little butt and said with a smile, Did you learn Dad's mantra when telling stories? With her father's jesting, Kiki finally calmed down and began to tell her story seriously. Speaking of which, Kiki was the same as Poplar Fruit. They were both professional players. Usually, they did not show off and gave people a feeling that they were not trustworthy. However, once they started to take it seriously, their performance on the spot would be impressive. Kiki was the same. Now, her voice was very clear, and there was a little excitement on her face. Brother Tortoise and Brother Lion fought. Then Brother Tortoise said, Hey, before we fight, can you tie up your hair first? Kiki jumped forward and pointed her finger forward. Although she was imitating the choral tone, her voice was so soft that people could not help but want to laugh. Zheng Yujie was the first to laugh out loud. Her reaction was a little faster than the Xiong siblings, and she immediately understood the burden that Chi-Chi had thrown at her. However, because Zheng Yujie was laughing so happily, Kiki was a little timid. She stopped and looked back at her father. It's okay, continue. Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's head encouragingly. You just told a great story. Continue. Zheng Yujie put away her smile and sat up straight as she said. Brother Lion heard it. He also said, then put down your bag first. Kiki twisted her hands on her shoulders and acted as if she was taking off her bag. After a moment of silence, Zheng Yujie finally understood the meaning of taking off her bag. She patted the bed again and laughed without caring about her image. Io, Kiki's story is so interesting, haha. Xiong Xiaofeng still didn't quite understand, but an older sister who understood went close to his ear and explained. Poplar Fruit's eyes were smiling. Seeing his daughter make Zheng Yujie laugh, he felt a sense of accomplishment. Zheng Yujie finally got tired of laughing and climbed up from the bed. She pulled Kiki into her arms and kissed Kiki's face hard. She laughed and said, Kiki's story is so funny. This is Auntie's favorite birthday present. Thank you, Kiki. Kiki, who was praised shyly, covered her little face. She was also very happy at this time and felt that she was really awesome. Zheng Yujie's birthday did not last long. She had been busy the whole day. She ran to take a shower early and then pulled her new favorite, Kiki, to sleep. Poplar Fruit washed his clothes and came to Fat Dragon's room. This guy is really a nocturnal animal. He was tired the whole day, including not sleeping at noon, but now he was not sleepy at all. Poplar Fruit was called by him. Fruit, something happened. Fat Dragon said mysteriously to Poplar Fruit and waved. What happened? Poplar Fruit frowned and came to Fat Dragon's side. He sat down and then looked at his big screen phone. Hey, why is there a photo of me? To be exact, it was a photo of Poplar Fruit in the mall in the morning. It was taken by the surveillance camera and his ID card. See? Fat Dragon pointed to the photo and said to Poplar Fruit, now all the toll booths at the entrance of the highway in Lidong, as well as several road intersections near us, there are policemen with your photo and information guarding. Where did this come from? Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. I found it. The Lidong Public Security Bureau has all your information. Fat Dragon said. It was released in the afternoon by the director named Lu Guoyang. Am I wanted? Poplar Fruit asked with a frown. To be exact, you are being targeted by the police in this county. Fat Dragon corrected. You are wanted. You didn't commit any heinous crimes. Even if he is the director of the Public Security Bureau, he has no right to put you on the wanted list. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, what about you? Did you get into trouble because of me? No, they can't seem to find our information. Fat Dragon laughed and said, they can recognize us with just a video. Do you think this is an American blockbuster? You, on the other hand, were easily found because your license plate number was recorded. I'm fine. They can't catch me. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He didn't feel scared at all. They can't catch you. You are hiding in the mountains. But if you go down the mountain, or if you drive your car out, you will still be caught. Fat Dragon curled his lips and said, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 605. Also, I don't think it's a good idea to continue like this. Fat Dragon saw that Poplar Fruit didn't seem to be worried. Instead, he said worriedly, if Kai Simin's side is fast, he'll send the goods over in half a month at the latest. What should we do then? I think that if a foreign vehicle comes in, they'll definitely check it. Moreover, it's being sent to Xiong Family Village. What if it gets detained? Kai Simin actually didn't take long to prepare the goods. On one hand, he had been preparing for it after Zheng Yujie asked. On the other hand, he was in Beijing's Silicon Valley. He didn't dare to say anything else. Just these few hundred special computer parts. Kai Simin didn't even need to personally go out to buy them. He just needed to make a phone call, and they would all be delivered within half an hour. Fat Dragon's problem really needed to be solved. Poplar Fruit was still thinking that taking down a county's executive deputy county head, who was also the person with the most power, would require long-term planning. But now, it seemed that this long-term planning couldn't wait any longer. Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, how's your evidence collection going? At Mengping's house, Fat Dragon found a lot of evidence, but most of it was about the corrupt leaders in the Education Bureau. There wasn't any evidence that could guarantee that they would kill Liang Huaxing's father, Liang Shengtao. Finally, they got to the main topic. Fat Dragon tapped on his phone's screen and jumped to another interface. He then said, I just checked Lu Guoyang, Liang Shengtao, and the other people in their faction's computers and phones. There is some evidence, but it's still not enough. Fat Dragon sighed, shook his head and said, how many people put their key evidence on the internet now? Moreover, it's these 50-plus-year-old men. Using a computer to go online is more or less enough. That won't do. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, without evidence, we can't take them down. Even if we can take down a few vermin, they're just small characters. They can't decide anything. However, Fat Dragon's expression wasn't very depressed. He laughed and said, there is evidence, but you have to get it. What do you mean? Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. Fat Dragon showed a picture to Poplar Fruit. It was a screenshot of a mobile phone interface. He said, this was found on Director Lu Guoyang's mobile phone. It was lying in the trash, but I still found it. What made Fat Dragon so excited? Poplar Fruit saw that it was a message that had been deleted. It had an address and an account book hidden in a certain location. Fat Dragon explained, this should be the evidence of Liang Xingtao's crimes. He wrote the account book himself. If I'm not wrong, all the red packets and bribes he received over the years are recorded in it. It was the eternal account book of those corrupt officials. They had to remember it. Although it was a time bomb to them, they could still use it as a black account to threaten them when they needed it. Since it's Liang Xingtao's things, how did Lu Guoyang know about it? Poplar Fruit asked in confusion. According to some of his text messages, it seems that he found a secret property of Liang Xingtao's. After he searched it himself, he found this evidence. However, he's still with Liang Xingtao, so he didn't reveal it. Fat Dragon laughed and said, this guy was afraid that he would forget, so he used his mobile phone to send a text message to himself. He only deleted it after he went back and wrote it down. Even if they're on the same side, they have ulterior motives and are wary of each other. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He looked at Fat Dragon and said, are you sure this evidence can bring down Liang Shengtao? Poplar Fruit twisted his arms and waist. Needless to say, Poplar Fruit had already made up his mind to do it himself. Fat Dragon nodded and said, most likely. Give me the address. Poplar Fruit said with a serious expression, there's no time to lose. I'll go down the mountain tonight. Fat Dragon was shocked and said, tonight? Isn't it too late? It's okay. Kiki is asleep, and Yujia is watching over her. It's even more inconvenient during the day. Poplar Fruit smiled calmly and said, also it's more convenient to move at night. They won't know that I'm going out at this time. Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon went to find Xiong Kahu to discuss this matter. Xiong Kahu was an old man. When he was young, he often ran thousands of miles in the middle of the night and killed enemy generals in their sleep. When he heard Poplar Fruit's plan, not only did he not object, he even praised, a good man should be fearless. However, Xiong Kahu was not as reckless as Poplar Fruit. He was experienced and immediately came up with a plan for Poplar Fruit. He even said cautiously, go to the county. I'll let Jishir go with you. The two of you can take care of each other. Although he was confident in his own strength, Poplar Fruit still agreed to his master's arrangement. After changing into black night clothes, which was actually a black and blue meow-tight jacket and leggings, Poplar Fruit went down the mountain with Xiong Kahu. Fat Dragon installed a few apps in Poplar Fruit's phone. Therefore, Poplar Fruit could receive instructions from the command center when he plugged in his headphones. Xiong Kahu looked at it with interest at first, but later he felt bored and chased Fat Dragon back. He was really able to sleep. He was not worried about Poplar Fruit at all. For the old man, Poplar Fruit's trip was really nothing compared to the bullets he had experienced before. Because the forest was dark at night, although there were no large beasts nearby, the mountain roads were difficult to travel. Xiong Kahu walked in front with a powerful flashlight to lead the way, but the two still spent 2 hours to get down the mountain. Brother Chow. Brother Chow. Xiong Kahu knocked on the door of the small store gently. The old man inside was already asleep, but Xiong Kahu was still tidying up. He heard the sound and walked out. Why are you going down the mountain in the middle of the night? Xiongkahu looked at him and Poplar Fruit behind him and asked, "I'm going to the county to do something." "The chief ordered me to," Xiongkahu said. "Brother Chow, Brother Yang's car is being checked now. It's not convenient for him to go on the road. Let me borrow your motorcycle for a while." Xiongkahu heard that it was the chief's order, and did not ask further. He nodded, took out his keys, and pushed the motorcycle out from the backyard. The motorcycle was not a high-end road-going sports car. It was just a normal Suzuki King, the most common street car in the country. "Be careful." Xiongkahu patted the back seat of the motorcycle and handed it to Xiongkahu. It was not clear whether he was referring to the person or the car. Xiongkahu and Poplar Fruit nodded at him. Xiongkahu did not send them off and went back to sleep casually. Xiongkahu was more familiar with the roads. He sat in the front as the driver, and Poplar Fruit sat in the back. With a roar, a rainbow figure drove towards the county in the dark. "Oh right, I forgot to mention last night that Kiki's story was taken from Running_Man. It's not very funny, but it's all said by a child. It's very cute, isn't it?" Chapter 606. Although it was already the end of summer, the world seemed to still be immersed in the sultry heat of summer. The chirping of cicadas on both sides of the road didn't stop even though it was late at night. However, the motorcycle was shuttling through the winding road without a helmet. The whistling wind blew away the heat in their hearts, and their excited minds were surprisingly calm. "How do we go forward?" Poplar Fruit heard Fat Dragon's instructions from the headset and shouted loudly, 2 kilometers from here is the inspection place. We can't go there in front of the police." Even though it was the middle of the night, there was still a lot of traffic on the national highway. There were trucks with headlights on in front and behind. Fat Dragon had insight into the location of the police through the GPS positioning. Along the way, he had informed Poplar Fruit and the others that they had avoided the inspection place. However, this time, Poplar Fruit and the others were in trouble at the last checkpoint of the county town. It seemed that Fat Dragon couldn't see a path on the map that they could take. "Got it." Xiong Jisher raised his hand and shouted loudly, "Sit tight." Before they got close to the inspection place, Xiong Jisher pressed on the brake and turned right. The motorcycle ran over the shoulder of the road and fell directly into the field. Fortunately, it wasn't a paddy field, and the wheels fell steadily on the ground. However, because the field was soft, the rear wheels spun crazily in the soil when they fell, raising a lot of soil behind them. Vroom! Xiong Jisher twisted his right hand and stepped on the accelerator. The motorcycle jumped out of the pit and drove forward. It was a little exciting, the feeling of taking an unusual road. Poplar Fruit was sitting in the back, holding the edge of the seat tightly. Although it was a little unstable, his eyes flashed with excitement. The crops hadn't been harvested yet, and there were still rice seedlings in the field. When they jumped off, the wheels accidentally knocked down 2 of them. After the motorcycle started moving, Xiong Jisher held the front of the motorcycle very firmly, and the motorcycle kept driving through the gap in the middle. After driving through 3 acres of fields, this unusual road came to an end. Xiong Jisher drove on a small road in a village. He was afraid that he would wake up the villagers, so he slowed down the speed of the motorcycle. The noise was relatively low, and only the barking of dogs came from a few houses not far away. Near the village entrance on the left seemed to be the inspection place. The shaking tricolor police lights gave people a depressing feeling. However, Poplar Fruit and the others didn't know whether it was because they were a few hundred meters or the inspection place was very lax, but it was still quiet as if nothing had happened. After driving out of the village's field, Yanghua and the others returned to the main road. This time, there was no obstruction. The only thing they needed to pay attention to was the cameras at the intersection. In order to ensure that they wouldn't be tracked, Xiong Jisher had to carefully avoid them. Fortunately, Fat Dragon was there, so Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher's motorcycle didn't appear in the cameras. "Stop under the tree over there." Poplar Fruit pointed to a small alley on the side of the road, and asked Xiong Jisher to hide the motorcycle inside. 2 streets away, it was Liang Xingtao's gold cave that Fat Dragon had mentioned. Poplar Fruit planned to walk there. Clang! Poplar Fruit looked back. Xiong Jisher accidentally dropped the key on the ground. The young man was a little nervous. After picking up the key, he didn't know where to put his hands. He didn't have the psychological quality of his master. Poplar Fruit smiled, patted Xiong Jisher's shoulder and said, "You don't have to follow. Wait for me here." "That brother Yang," Xiong Jisher whispered anxiously. "Don't I need to help?" "Don't worry, I can handle it." Poplar Fruit smiled. He squatted down and tied his shoelaces, then looked around. If it was Yangcheng, there would still be a lot of cars and pedestrians, even in the wee hours of the morning. However, in Litong County, where food and clothing were a problem, it naturally couldn't afford this kind of nightlife. The streets were empty, and the street lights were all turned off. It was as if it was an empty city. Building 6, 301. Poplar Fruit climbed over the wall and entered the neighborhood that Fat Dragon had mentioned. He heard Fat Dragon's voice. He was worried that Poplar Fruit wouldn't remember it. Poplar Fruit ignored him and groped along the wall. Finally, he found the 6th building that Fat Dragon had mentioned. It was a small, old residential area, but because it was relatively close to the city center, the nearby traffic was very convenient. From this point of view, it was indeed a good hiding place. This kind of old residential building didn't even have a security guard, let alone a surveillance camera. Therefore, Poplar Fruit looked at the dark 301 and walked into the corridor. It wasn't the first time that Poplar Fruit had been a thief, but he didn't know how to pick locks, so he wasn't a qualified thief. Looking at the cold iron door, Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He had to climb up the sewer pipe again. Poplar Fruit jumped to the window of the corridor. He was skilled and daring, so he wasn't afraid that he would slip and fall. Before he came up, Poplar Fruit had observed that his right hand slightly touched the inner edge of the wall. Then he turned his body outside and quickly grabbed the sewer pipe with his left hand. Then he climbed up agilely like a monkey. This was the benefit of practicing the 8 steps meteor kick. The flexibility of his legs was greatly increased, and this series of movements was as smooth as a shooting star. This was just the beginning. Poplar Fruit started climbing from the 2.5 floor, so he would reach the 3rd floor after another half floor. Poplar Fruit grabbed the window with one hand, and then let go of his other hand. His legs, which were holding the sewer pipe, swung in the air. The sound of metal rubbing against each other was very soft. Poplar Fruit had already climbed up the anti-theft net on the balcony of 301. The anti-theft net couldn't stop a flying thief like Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit knew that the anti-theft net had a small escape window. In less than half a minute, Poplar Fruit found the small window. Of course, just as Poplar Fruit thought, there was a small lock on it. Already prepared, Poplar Fruit grabbed the fence with one hand and fumbled in the small tool bag at his waist with the other hand. He took out a medium-sized vise. In order to solve any possible problems, Poplar Fruit asked for a lot of tools from his master. His master also had tools to open locks, but Poplar Fruit didn't know how to use them, so it was useless. The vise bit on one side of the lock. Poplar Fruit's left hand slightly exerted force, and with a snap, the lock broke. Poplar Fruit gently twisted the small lock, took it out, and put it in the small bag at his waist. Then he gently shook the small escape door. The anti-theft net, which was rusty due to the wind and rain, was difficult to open. Poplar Fruit shook it so that it wouldn't make too much noise and attract the attention of the surrounding residents. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 607. Creak. Even though he took a long time, when he opened the anti-theft net, an ear-piercing sound pierced through the sky. Luckily, it wasn't too loud. It was a decibel lower than the sound of cicadas on the tree. Poplar Fruit was silent for a moment. When he didn't find any movement, he let out a sigh of relief. Climbing in wasn't a problem. Poplar Fruit was very flexible. Even if one of his hands was hanging in the air, he could easily curl up his body and stuff his 2 feet in. With a light jump, Poplar Fruit landed on the balcony floor without making a sound. Pushing the door open, Poplar Fruit let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, Liang Shengtao didn't go crazy and lock the entire department. This saved Poplar Fruit a lot of trouble. There was no one in the room. Poplar Fruit turned on the small flashlight tied to his headgear and easily entered the room. Which room is it in? Poplar Fruit knew it was in the bedroom, but there were 3 bedrooms inside. He had to search one by one. There was no need to ask Fat Dragon. Plus, he didn't know. It should be here. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. The first time he opened the door, he saw the bedroom that looked very similar to the picture Fat Dragon showed him. What a coincidence. It was indeed a coincidence. There were 3 bedrooms. Poplar Fruit didn't believe it. He opened the door one by one and found that the decoration in each room was different. In other words, the guest room that Poplar Fruit first opened was the room he was looking for. The bill wasn't hidden in the master bedroom. It was hidden in the most inconspicuous guest room. Gently lifting the mattress, a black leather notebook was quietly lying inside. Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. This is it. Clang clang. Before Poplar Fruit could reach out to grab it, the sound of a key knocking on the door lock suddenly came from the dead silent room. The air seemed to be cut open, and then suddenly seemed to be frozen. Damn it, someone's here? Poplar Fruit's pupils shrank. He didn't have time to scold Fat Dragon for not reminding him. He quickly put down the mattress and turned off the small flashlight. Although he was very anxious, Poplar Fruit still tiptoed and did not make any sound. The sound of the key was like a countdown clock, clearly telling Poplar Fruit that someone was about to come in. No, Poplar Fruit was just about to hide when he remembered that he had opened the doors of the 3 bedrooms. In the end, he was still inexperienced and didn't remember to close the door after opening it. As long as that person saw it, even if he was brainless, he would know that something had happened. No. Poplar Fruit turned around and ran. When he ran, he tiptoed and his whole body floated between the rooms. There was an outer iron door and an inner wooden door. The lock of the outer iron door was already open and was being pulled open. It would take at most 4 seconds to open the door. Poplar Fruit quickly closed the door of the guest room. At this time, all the muscles in his body were mobilized and his mind was focused like never before. Poplar Fruit pulled the door hard and slowly locked it. The switch was seamless. 1-2. It was too fast. Poplar Fruit's figure had already created a light breeze in the living room. However, even though it was fast, it was rare that he didn't make any sound during the whole process. There was still the last one. Bada. The crisp sound of the door lock was heard. The last wooden door was unlocked. Poplar Fruit immediately flashed into the master bedroom. Just as his figure disappeared, the wooden door was pushed open. The last one. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Poplar Fruit's forehead. He was about to suffocate. Usually, when he went to exercise in the morning, he would exercise twice as much as a normal person to make Poplar Fruit sweat. Poplar Fruit suppressed the nervousness in his heart. He clenched his teeth and gently closed the door of the master bedroom. Then he gently closed it. Finally, he slowly let go of the door handle and let the lock be gently locked. Tap tap. The person who came in didn't take off his shoes. The sound of leather shoes on the ground was gradually approaching. Poplar Fruit was stunned. The person was at the door. Poplar Fruit had just let go of the door handle when he saw the door handle twist and was about to be pushed open. It was a close call. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to find a place to hide. He steeled his heart, moved his feet, took a deep breath, and shrunk his body into a thin line. He was squeezed tightly behind the open door. The space behind the door was very small. In order to not let the person who opened the door feel strange, Poplar Fruit had already tried his best to breathe out the air in his body. He also raised his arms and stood like a bamboo pole. The person wasn't discovered. The footsteps of the person were very relaxed. Then he felt for the light switch. Pa! The entire master bedroom was brightly lit. Poplar Fruit was still worried. He didn't dare to relax at all. Who knew if the person who came in would suddenly have the idea to close the door from inside? Then Poplar Fruit would be exposed. Plop! The person who came in lay on the bed. Poplar Fruit's heart was slightly relieved. He only heard the person let out a comfortable sigh. It seemed that he was stretching. Listening to the voice, it should be a man, and he wasn't young either. If Poplar Fruit didn't guess wrong, he was the owner of this house, Liang Shengtao. Why did he come back? Poplar Fruit was quite helpless. He heard from Fat Dragon that Liang Shengtao had a few properties. Other than his home, the one he went to the most was the Hidden Beauty Cave, a nickname given by Fat Dragon, opposite of the Hidden Gold Cave. Poplar Fruit thought that he could steal the account book and leave without anyone knowing. He didn't expect Liang Shengtao to come back. What Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon didn't know was that Liang Shengtao usually hid the money that people gave him at home. As long as the hidden money reached 50,000 yuan, he would transfer it here. Today, Poplar Fruit was really lucky to run into him. Poplar Fruit could only curl up and take small breaths. He couldn't use too much force, otherwise, the door would be broken open by Poplar Fruit. After a while, there was a burst of laughter from the bed. Poplar Fruit was almost scared. He thought that the old man had gone crazy. Hee. You don't want me to be the county magistrate, so you have a good life? He only heard Liang Shengtao talking to himself. Lidong is my world. You foreigners can *ck it. Ha 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 ha. Through the crack in the door, Poplar Fruit could still see his crazy and arrogant look. Poplar Fruit was speechless. He felt that his ears had been polluted. He knew that Liang Shengtao could do whatever he wanted in Lidong. He also knew that his son was a tyrant. Then he heard from Fat Dragon that Liang Huaxing wasn't like Liang Shengtao at all. Liang Shengtao was very shrewd. But now, it seemed that Liang Shengtao was indeed very shrewd. He pretended to be cautious on the outside, but secretly, he was a narcissist. Like father, like son. Liang Huaxing's personality was inherited from his father. After a while, Poplar Fruit's heart was in a mess. He frowned and wondered why the old man hadn't left yet. Even though Poplar Fruit's physical fitness was good, if he curled up like that, he wouldn't be able to take it. But the world outside the crack in the door suddenly changed. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 608. Huala Huala. Separated by a wooden door, Yanghua could clearly hear the strange sound coming from the master bedroom. In the end, Poplar Fruit couldn't hold back. He grabbed the wooden door with one hand to prevent it from being pushed open. Then he stuck his head forward and peeked through the small gap in the door. The scene in front of him made him stunned. The big bed that Liang Shengtao was lying on was moved by the mechanism and slowly flipped up. After flipping open, a flat safe was revealed. Poplar Fruit thought that the bottom of the big bed was solid and couldn't hide anyone, so Poplar Fruit hid behind the door. However, he didn't expect that not only was the bottom hollow, but a part of the floor was also hollowed out. That was how the large safe that Poplar Fruit saw could be placed. As for how big the safe was, Poplar Fruit felt that if it was empty, it wouldn't be a problem to stuff two people in. Probably guessing what Liang Shengtao was going to do next, Poplar Fruit had an idea. He gently pushed the door open a little, so that his left hand could be put down. He took out his phone from his trouser pocket and quickly closed the gap in the door. Liang Shengtao's attention was on the safe in front of him. He didn't pay attention to Poplar Fruit's little movements behind him. Poplar Fruit turned on the recording function of his phone. After a little adjustment, Poplar Fruit tried to take a picture through the gap in the door. However, Poplar Fruit looked at the screen and frowned. The angle wasn't very good. Liang Shengtao's body was somewhat blocking the safe. After thinking about it, Poplar Fruit raised the phone. Poplar Fruit was very tall. When he raised his hand, it was much higher than the upper edge of the door. So if Liang Shengtao looked back, he would definitely see a hand inexplicably reaching out from the top of the door. It was holding a phone. The phone was silently taking pictures. Poplar Fruit was also quietly peeking through the gap in the door. It was past 3 o'clock at night. It was Poplar Fruit's bedtime, but Poplar Fruit wasn't sleepy at all. His eyes were wide open and full of excitement. Liang Shengtao's body was somewhat blocked. Poplar Fruit only saw him enter some password and open the safe. This time, Poplar Fruit saw that the large safe was actually stuffed with a lot of things. The most important thing was money, a lot of money. Liang Shengtao wasn't in a hurry to put the money in. Instead, he took out a small black bag from inside. It was a bit like the protective bag Poplar Fruit used to store his MP3 player in high school. However, it seemed that the texture of this small bag was better. He was breathing heavily as he opened the small bag and poured out a lot of shiny things, which covered Liang Shengtao's palm. 1, 2, 3. Liang Shengtao counted carefully. His eyes were a little blurry. He was very close, and his nose was almost touching. 14, 15. 15. Are they diamonds? Poplar Fruit's eyes were wide open. Not only that, after Liang Shengtao put it away, he took out a small blue bag and continued to pour out a few more diamonds. This one was obviously bigger than the previous ones. Hearing Liang Shengtao count, he counted to 9. After counting, Liang Shengtao put it away with satisfaction. He took a deep breath, as if the sour feeling had seeped into his bones. Then he took out 5 stacks of banknotes from the bag beside him and prepared to put them in. However, Liang Shengtao wasn't in a hurry at all. He actually sat down and grabbed a stack of banknotes to count. Listening to the sound of his counting, it was quite similar to the rhythm of chanting scriptures in front of Buddha. However, it couldn't be compared to chanting scriptures, as that would be an insult to Buddhism. Poplar Fruit took pictures for a while, then put away his phone. He suppressed the urge to replay it, and was ready to continue hiding. However, he suddenly felt a little uneasy, as if he had an ominous premonition. No, I can't stay here any longer. Poplar Fruit believed in his premonition. This premonition allowed him to escape a disaster in America. After taking a deep breath, Poplar Fruit mustered up his courage and gently pushed the door open. Liang Shengtao's back appeared in front of Poplar Fruit. However, as Liang Shengtao was busy counting the money, he didn't expect someone to come out from behind him. Poplar Fruit tiptoed out from behind the door, then gently closed the door. The steps he took were the 8 meteor steps kick. He used his body to propel his feet forward. Of course, he didn't really jump. It was just that walking like this made his body light and graceful. When he lifted his feet and landed on the ground, there was no sound. The ominous premonition in his heart suddenly rose. Poplar Fruit quickly turned around, then turned out of the door and hid behind the wall. Poplar Fruit's premonition was right. Just as he left the door, Liang Shengtao happened to look back, but all he saw was an empty and dark living room. Many people had a sixth sense, especially when Poplar Fruit was staring at Liang Shengtao and taking pictures with his phone. Liang Shengtao had always felt that something was wrong, but his sixth sense was much worse than Poplar Fruit's, so it didn't raise his guard. When he was counting the money, he felt a chill on his back, as if someone was watching him. However, when he was counting most of the money in his hand, he didn't want to be distracted and turn around, which gave Poplar Fruit a chance to escape. When he turned around to look, Poplar Fruit had already hidden. Poplar Fruit didn't hide far, and just happened to hide in the door of the guest room next door. At this moment, he was extremely focused, and all of a sudden he triggered his mysterious sense. Although they weren't in the same line of sight, Poplar Fruit could see Liang Shengtao turn around and glance back. At this moment, a pool of sweat appeared on Poplar Fruit's back. Damn, that was too close. Poplar Fruit couldn't believe that he had dodged so coincidentally. Liang Shengtao looked at the empty room, shook his head, and said self-deprecatingly, "Sigh, I'm getting old. I'm still so paranoid in the middle of the night." After that, he stood up, closed the guest room door, and then sat down to continue counting the money. Luckily, he didn't continue to hide behind the door. Poplar Fruit patted his thumping heart in relief. If he was still hiding inside, Liang Shengtao would definitely discover him as soon as he closed the door. However, this special ability that sometimes didn't work made Poplar Fruit very worried. It seemed that it hadn't appeared for a few months, right? Poplar Fruit just now didn't think that if he had this ability, would Poplar Fruit still need to use his phone to take pictures? Wouldn't it be fine if he just used his sense to see Liang Shengtao's password? It couldn't be helped. Now that he relaxed a little, it couldn't sense him again. Poplar Fruit looked around and felt that it wasn't safe to hide in the door, so he tiptoed through the living room and hid behind the sofa. It was against the wall, and there was a gap where he could hide. Although it was a little dusty and dirty, Liang Shengtao wouldn't have thought that he could hide here. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 609. Finally, after Liang Shengtao was satisfied with counting money, he left his treasure cave in the dead of night. Poplar Fruit came out from behind the sofa. First, he called Xiong Jisher to let him know that he was safe. The young man was a little anxious, and Poplar Fruit was worried that he would think that something had happened to him. Then he called Fatty Dragon and woke him up from his dreams. Fatty Dragon had fallen asleep in the middle of the task. Before calling Fat Dragon, Poplar Fruit looked at the video on his phone. Even though the iPhone 5 was about to be released, the iPhone 4S in Poplar Fruit's hands was still very competitive. It could shoot 1080p HD videos and had a noise reduction function. Even though it was under incandescent light at night, the recording effect was very good. However, Poplar Fruit still felt that the video wasn't clear enough. Plus, the screen was small, so he couldn't see which passwords Liang Shengtao had pressed in the video. Big discovery. You definitely wouldn't have thought that you would catch a big fish this time. Poplar Fruit excitedly told Fat Dragon about what had just happened. He skipped the thrilling scene and talked about the safe. Fat Dragon, help me deal with that video. I want the password. No problem. Watch me. Hearing that there was a big safe, Fat Dragon was also very excited. His sleepiness was immediately dispelled. He held Poplar Fruit's MacBook and rolled up his sleeves. He didn't have any sleeves, he was wearing a singlet, intending to do something big. However, in the era where 4G was still unknown, 3G video transmission software was very slow. The progress bar made people feel like they were crawling like a turtle. Although Poplar Fruit didn't feel bad about burning data, after waiting for a while, he couldn't wait any longer. He simply put his phone aside and took out the black notebook from the guest room. He turned on the flashlight on his headgear and flipped it open. It was a record of when a certain person had given or received something. It was very simple, but this simple entry actually took up half a thick notebook. Looking at the earliest entries, it was actually from 3 years ago. This notebook contained at least 3 years' worth of black accounts. For some reason, there was no previous one. Perhaps Liang Shengtao did not record it before, or perhaps he hid it somewhere else. But this was not important. With this book, it was enough to cause a magnitude 8 earthquake in Lidong's officialdom. Poplar Fruit found many familiar names on it. Why was it familiar? In the past 2 days, if it wasn't from Meng Ping, it was from Fat Dragon. Most of them were leaders in Lidong County. Some were station chiefs, and some were county magistrates. There were also many names that he had never heard of before. Poplar Fruit guessed that they were probably some of the city's leaders. They were the handles that Fat Dragon had mentioned before. He hid the black leather notebook in his backpack. This time he came here to get the evidence. He did not even plan to leave any leeway for the other party. Since Liang Shengtao had just been here, Poplar Fruit felt that Liang Shengtao would not come again in the near future. So he simply took the evidence and cut off his escape route. Fat Dragon had finished transferring the data, but he still needed to use the software on Poplar Fruit's computer to process the video file. Otherwise, it would still not be clear. Poplar Fruit took this opportunity to return to the master bedroom. Hee, as the saying goes, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. This Liang Shengtao is still lacking. Poplar Fruit muttered as he shook his head. Liang Shengtao had hidden all the important things in this place. Although the safe and the account book were hidden separately, it still gave the other party a chance to catch them all in one fell swoop. Yongwu didn't see how Liang Shengtao activated the mechanism to raise the bed, but from the hollow echo, anyone who had read detective novels or manga would know that the bed was hollow. Yongwu didn't see how Liang Shengtao activated the mechanism to raise the bed, but from the hollow echo, anyone who had read detective novels or manga would know that the bed was hollow. But why was there no movement? Where did he hide it? Wait a minute. Why is there something wrong with the bedside lamp? Poplar Fruit realized that the English style of the bedside lamp was somewhat out of place with the other decorations in the room. His eyes lit up, and he slowly leaned over. His hands touched the bedside lamp. It's loose. Poplar Fruit tried to pull the bedside lamp out or press it in, but it did not move, until he used both hands to twist the bedside lamp clockwise. It was really loose. When he twisted it to 180 degrees, he heard a soft click sound. The bedside lamp stopped, and then the clatter of the mechanism sounded again. This is it. Poplar Fruit quickly moved the quilt and pillow that were about to slip on the bed to the side. The bed was turned over, revealing the huge safe. Is it done? Poplar Fruit was a little anxious. He had been in the room for more than an hour, and the sky was about to turn bright. Okay. Fat Dragon breathed quickly and said, Holy sh asterisk Tigua, did I just see it wrong? That's a diamond. Why do you care what it is? Hurry up and give me the password. Poplar Fruit was speechless as he urged. The password should be 3 6s, 2 8s, and then a 5. The last one seems to be one of the 4 numbers 7, 4 1 or 2. I didn't see it. It's okay, I'll try. Poplar Fruit said. Oh right, this safe doesn't have any restrictions on entering the password, right? Fat Dragon said honestly. Yes, you only have 3 chances to make a mistake. If you make a mistake 3 times, then the alarm will be triggered. Fat Dragon had just checked the safe's information on the internet. That's 4 chances just right. For possibilities. Even if the first 3 times were wrong, the 4th time must be right. Poplar Fruit said casually. Poplar Fruit didn't let him wait for the 4th time. He felt that Liang Shengtao wouldn't like the number 4, so he decisively pressed 1 on the last number. As a result, the safe really opened. Tisk, you're so King lucky. Fat Dragon felt envious. There are a few passports inside. Poplar Fruit swept around with the flashlight. Money, diamonds, and a few bricks of gold. However, he still noticed the passport that was placed at the top of the pile. Fruit, look at the diamonds first. Why do you care about the passports? Fat Dragon said resentfully. Diamonds. Why are you acting like a girl? Poplar Fruit scolded him. What are we doing here this time? Did you forget? What's the rush for diamonds? The passports are already prepared. It seems that Liang Shengtao is ready to escape. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said to Fat Dragon, Luckily, we came at the right time and saw his safe. Look, there's so much money. I estimate that in this safe, including the gold and diamonds, there's no less than 10 million yuan. How greedy. Yang Guo's guess was right. Liang Shengtao had been in Qiridong for the past few years. Not including the money he had bribed. He had plundered the already poor Qiridong County to the point that it was thinning by a few layers. The vault of gold was all his hope, especially the safe. As soon as he realized that something was wrong, he would immediately take his wife and children with him, take the huge amount of money and jewelry, and fly out of the country. He had already prepared his escape route, but unfortunately he met Poplar Fruit. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 610. Fruit, do a live broadcast for me. Fat Dragon shamelessly refused to let Poplar Fruit hang up the phone. He even asked him to explain to him while he rummaged through the safe. He really didn't know if he was really as fat as a dragon. Why was he so interested in gold and silver treasures? Passports, I'll take them all, so you can't run away. Yang Guo got the key evidence. He was very happy. He put the passports into his bag and whispered to Fatty Dragon. Brother Fatty Dragon, don't worry. Who cares about the passports? Diamonds are the main show. Fat Dragon couldn't wait. Don't be noisy if you want to listen to the live broadcast, don't talk nonsense. Poplar Fruit laughed and scolded. Now that there was only Poplar Fruit left in the room, he could say whatever he wanted. He also waited for a while, so he wasn't worried that Deputy County Magistrate Liang would come back. Finally, he took out the 2 bags of diamonds and weighed them in his hand. They really felt very little, as if they were light. However, who knew the value of these diamonds? Poplar Fruit took out a few diamonds from each bag and carefully observed them under the flashlight. He found that they were all high-quality goods. The cut edges were smooth and didn't cut his hand. They were crystal clear, and there were no impurities. When Poplar Fruit was in the foreign trade business, during Du Ronghui and his wife's 25th wedding anniversary, he accompanied the manager to a few jewelry shops. He more or less knew about diamonds. The size of the diamonds in the black bag was relatively uniform. Poplar Fruit estimated that it should be between 1.5 to 2 carats, definitely less than 2 carats. The diamonds in the blue bag were large. Most of them were 3 carats or slightly smaller. There were even 2 that were the size of a fingernail, at least 4 carats. Even Poplar Fruit felt his heart beat faster when he saw them. Poplar Fruit couldn't tell which grade it was, but he felt that whether it was a black bag or a blue bag, they weren't worse than the F-grade ones he saw in the jewelry store. If that was the case, then according to the market price 2 years ago, the total value of the 15 black bags would be about 3 million yuan. As for the blue bags, Poplar Fruit made a rough estimation. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Excluding the 2 big diamonds, the total value of the 5 bags should be close to 5 million yuan. As for the 2 big diamonds, they could easily be sold for 1 million yuan each. Of course, what Poplar Fruit said was only the value on the surface. If it was sold on the black market, it would definitely shrink a lot. Even so, the 2 bags of diamonds in Poplar Fruit's hands were already worth nearly 10 million. Even Poplar Fruit, who had always been mentally strong, almost couldn't handle it. Fruit. Bring it back, bring it back. Fat Dragon's breathing was a little heavy. He shouted excitedly, I want to give it to my wife. However, Poplar Fruit regained his composure. He shook his head and said, No. Why? It's not heavy. It's our spoils of war. Fat Dragon looked at his phone like he was looking at a fool. He was very puzzled by Poplar Fruit's reaction. Don't tell me you sympathize with this corrupt official? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Sympathize with your sister. I just feel that it's not right to do this, and I feel guilty. Fruit, when did you become so vulgar? Fat Dragon said anxiously. You left it there, but it was squandered by Liang Shengtao. If we take it back, we can do something good. I won't take it for free. With a 70% discount, I can use the money to do something good for the stockade, right? It's not the same. Poplar Fruit shook his head stubbornly and said, We came out to search for evidence to bring down this corrupt official, not to steal the money. That way we won't be chivalrous thieves but real thieves, do you understand? I don't think you're a greedy person. If you wanted to make some money before, with your ability, you could get a lot of dirty money in minutes. But I've never seen you do this. Isn't it because you don't want to go against your conscience to make money? Poplar Fruit persuaded. If you need money, I can lend it to you. Even if you want to give the diamond to your wife, I can buy one for you in the future, and I'll buy it in France. Fat Dragon understood the truth of Poplar Fruit's words, but he was still a little unwilling. There was a mountain of gold and silver in front of him, and it seemed to be at his fingertips. There was no risk, but he returned empty-handed. This feeling of pity was different from him not doing it because he knew that it was illegal to use hacking skills to make dirty money. But what I mean is, if you have so much money to waste, you might as well take it back and spend it on the children in the mountains. With tens of millions, you can build a lot of schools, and even buy authentic computers to realize your idea of remote education. Fat Dragon said unwillingly. To be honest, when Fat Dragon mentioned the children, Poplar Fruit's eyes flickered. After all, he was also a hot-blooded young man, and such a chivalrous thing like robbing the rich to help the poor made him waver a little. However, Poplar Fruit's eyes regained their clarity. He shook his head, lowered his voice, and said into the headset's microphone, No, Poplar Fruit, although I don't have much money, I can still let the children go to school. I can't let this dirty money taint education. Besides, this money must have been taken by Liang Shengtao from the people in Lidong County. It has its own place to go. There was another reason he didn't say, and that was that he had to let Liang Shengtao get the punishment he deserved. I can't stand you. You're so rigid. Fat Dragon rolled his eyes. In fact, he wasn't that conflicted, but he still wanted to say something to Poplar Fruit. Then you can leave them there. If Liang Shengtao gets wind of it and runs away with the diamonds and money, you'll regret it. Poplar Fruit wouldn't let himself regret it. He had already thought about what to do next. He wouldn't take the diamonds away, but he wouldn't leave them there for Liang Shengtao to take away. First, Poplar Fruit found a waterproof plastic bag, put the 2 small bags of diamonds together, tied a knot, and threw them into the water tank of the toilet. Because it wasn't big, Poplar Fruit believed that Liang Shengtao wouldn't have thought that he would hide it there. Next, Poplar Fruit hid the dozens of heavy gold bricks on the top of the wardrobe in the second bedroom. He didn't hide it, but as the saying goes, darkness is darkness under the light. Poplar Fruit didn't believe that Liang Shengtao would be able to find it. There were about hundreds of thousands of yuan and tens of thousands of dollars in the safe, and a few Citibank cards. It looked strange. It seemed that this was where all of Liang Shengtao's stolen money was. Poplar Fruit also hid the few bank cards in the cracks of the gold bricks. As for the rest of the money, Poplar Fruit thought about it and took it out. He put it in a few plastic bags and found a suitable place to hide it. Although it was still hidden in the vault of gold, Poplar Fruit didn't want to leave any hope for Liang Shengtao to make a comeback. In the past, he was cruel to the people. Today he would make him pay for it one by one. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 6:11. After cleaning up his fingerprints, Poplar Fruit walked out of the balcony. It was already 4:15 in the morning. The sky seemed to have been mixed with a mass of green dispersal, indicating that the day was coming. Youngwa didn't dare to dilly-dally anymore. When the people who woke up early to do business came out and woke up this quiet little town, Youngwa's appearance would reveal that she was hiding 300 taels of silver. Poplar Fruit quickly climbed out of the anti-theft net and put back the lock he cut. Even if it couldn't fool anyone, it could delay the time for the other party to find out. Following the original path, Poplar Fruit climbed from the anti-theft net back to the sewer pipe. He went down to the second floor, looked at the flat cement floor below, and then jumped down. With his skill, he naturally wouldn't be injured from this height. Although it was a jog, Poplar Fruit's steps were very fast, and his landing was very strange. It felt like a wisp of smoke, and he was already more than 10 meters away. It seemed that Poplar Fruit hadn't run to his heart's content for a while. He suddenly became excited and started to use the 8 steps meteor kick. His front and back legs chased each other like crazy wheels, and he couldn't even see their shadows. In front of the wall, Poplar Fruit didn't slow down at all. He jumped up, raised his legs high, and made a curled-up posture in the air. His arms gently patted the wall, and his whole body flew over like a paper airplane. He then landed on the ground and continued to run. His movements were smooth, without a trace of sluggishness. Poplar Fruit ran along the wall, and even used the green belt to hide his body. So when he ran to Xiong Jisher's side, the young man who was anxiously looking at the road didn't notice him. "Let's go." Poplar Fruit patted Xiong Jisher's shoulder, which scared him and made him jump half a meter high on the ground. Fortunately, he didn't cry out. When he saw Poplar Fruit, he shyly breathed a sigh of relief. "How is it? Are you tired? If you're tired, I can lead the way back." Poplar Fruit smiled. Xiong Jisher raised his head, patted his chest and said, "It's okay, big brother Yang, I'm not sleepy at all." The trip back was even smoother than when they came. At this time, even the policemen had gone back to sleep, leaving only the half-drooping gates blocking the traffic. Although there were only a few cars, Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher swaggered back from the national highway. They didn't need to hide or even drive back from the fields. Therefore, Poplar Fruit let Fat Dragon, who had been busy for a day and a night, go to sleep first. There was no need for him to keep an eye on them. Fat Dragon was not as young as he was when he participated in the hacker war with Clay Country. After getting married, his work and rest were at least a little regular, and staying up late began to be unbearable. When they returned to the mountain, it was almost 7 o'clock. As soon as Poplar Fruit walked into his room, he heard Kiki, who had just woken up, sitting on the bed in a daze and asking for her father. "Boo-hoo, I don't want Auntie, I want Papa." "Papa doesn't want Kiki anymore?" "Boo-hoo." Kiki sobbed in a daze. She was no longer as inseparable from Poplar Fruit as she was when she was less than 1 year old. Especially after she went to the mountain. She didn't need her father's company when she walked around with her friends. However, Kiki, who had just woken up, hadn't fully recovered. The first and only person she thought of in her heart was her most solid and trustworthy support, her father. In addition, the little girl had a bad temper when she woke up. If she didn't get what she wanted, she would be very sad and cry. This was also the reason why Poplar Fruit would finish his morning exercise on time and return to his daughter's side in the morning. Today, Poplar Fruit was delayed in Liang Shengtao's gold cave, so he came back later than originally planned. As a result, Kiki made a fuss. Zheng Yujie hadn't slept enough. Although she sat up, her hair was scattered, and one of her eyes was open and the other was closed. Her confused look was very cute, but it was somewhat different from her usual swift and decisive appearance. Zheng Yujie coaxed Kiki. If it weren't for Kiki's lingering crying, she would probably go back to sleep. Kiki, look who's back. Yanghua hurriedly went back to the other room and took off the dirty short meow clothes that she was wearing. She changed into clean clothes and ran to hug her daughter and coaxed her. Poplar fruit. Zheng Yujie squinted for a long time before she found that it was poplar fruit. The neckline of her pajamas was a little low, revealing the white undulations of her chest, which made poplar fruit feel a little hot in the morning. You sleep for a while, I'll coax her. Poplar fruit smiled and put the quilt on Zheng Yujie. She also fell down and continued to sleep. It seemed that her biological clock was still not adjusted well. Papa, don't leave Kiki. The little girl was not fully awake. She grabbed the clothes on her father's chest, buried her head in it, and acted coquettishly with her father in a soft voice. Daddy, aren't you always here? Poplar fruit knew that it would be fine when she woke up. He smiled and carried Kiki downstairs, wet a towel with cold well water for her to wash her face, and then made her a bottle of breakfast milk. Fat Dragon was sleeping soundly, and it was estimated that he would not wake up until noon, so the evidence that poplar fruit brought back was put in his room first, and they would discuss how to deal with it when he woke up. Poplar fruit was also a little tired. After all, he was still a human and not a god, and he was still a little tired after not sleeping for a whole day. However, poplar fruit was not in a hurry to go to sleep. He first went to tell his master that he was safe. You young people can deal with such a small matter by yourselves. This kind of rascal can be a good practice for you. Xiongkahu was an old man with a big heart. He slept very well last night, and in the morning he was still practicing his swordsmanship in front of the school gate. Poplar fruit ran to report to his master, but in the end he just casually left such a sentence, not worried about his two disciples at all. However, the more poplar fruit thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. What did he mean by practice? Poplar fruit heard his master talk about the things that happened when he was young. Not only during the war, but when his master had just walked out of the underworld. He was also a person who was willing to take revenge. He risked the danger of being wanted by the police and ran to kill several enemies with his own hands. Later, he was forced to hide in the army. According to Xiongkahu's way of doing things, the only way he could deal with these people who brought him trouble was to kill them. Killing people was just a matter of nodding his head to the ground. So it was better to end it quickly and save himself the trouble of dragging things out. So this practice, well, poplar fruit did not dare to think about it anymore. After all, he was a civilized person who came out of a civilized society. Although he would take some unusual measures, he would not go to such extremes. It was better to just listen to the old man's words. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 6:12. It's gone. It's gone. Liang Shengtao still couldn't believe his eyes. He re-entered the password to open the safe. The heavy door opened and knocked on one side, making a heavy sound, just like his heavy heart. The safe was empty. That damn thief, who had been hacked into pieces, did not even leave behind a single piece of paper. Liang Shengtao reached his arm into the safe, fumbled around, then took it out. He clenched his fist and then opened it again. There was only air. My diamond. Do you know how rare that diamond is? If Liang Shengtao was standing in front of poplar fruit, he would definitely stand on his tiptoes, desperately grab poplar fruit's clothes, and then cry bitterly and question the thief who took away all his hard-earned money. Buying a large number of diamonds in China was very easy to attract people's attention. After all, diamonds were a luxury for most people, especially the poor Lidong County. Liang Shengtao's 2 small bags of diamonds, one black and one blue, were almost the amount of high-quality diamonds stored by a big jewelry store in the provincial capital. He had so many diamonds, and people who didn't know him would think that he had robbed a jewelry store. In order to buy so many diamonds, Liang Shengtao used the excuse of inspecting to go to Hong Kong a few times. For someone of his level, It was not easy to leave the country. After he went to Hong Kong, Liang Shengtao still couldn't buy the diamonds openly. There were records in the big jewelry stores. He asked a middleman to buy the diamonds from the black market at a high price. Other people thought that he was a scammer, and he overcharged the price by 50%. But in the end, Liang Shengtao still paid for the diamonds. He divided them into several parts, and it took him 5 to 6 years to collect so many diamonds. For Liang Shengtao, these diamonds that he had bought with so much effort were his treasures to escape. It was not convenient to carry banknotes and gold with him. He couldn't carry much banknotes, and gold was very heavy. Only these 2 bags of diamonds. No one would recognize them even if he put them in his pockets. But they were all gone. This feeling was like a cabbage that he had painstakingly cultivated for a few years, exaggerating, only to wake up one night and find that it had been eaten by a pig. What made him feel even more helpless was that he still couldn't find this sinful pig. The diamonds were gone, the gold was gone, the banknotes were gone, and even the Citibank cards were gone. Liang Shengtao had controlled Lidong for so many years, and the wealth he had plundered was not just the 20 to 30 million in diamonds and gold. That was just a small amount, and the rest was still in the bank. Liang Shengtao had learned about the seniors, who had fallen from grace before. Those who had hidden their money at home had all been found. As for those who hid their money in the bank, as long as they did not take the initiative to confess, no one would be able to find it. Although Liang Shengtao did not buy more properties to hide his money, he still knew how to hide his money. Liang Shengtao wasn't stupid enough to store his money in the 4 major domestic banks. He had only saved a few 100,000 yuan, and the rest of his money was stored in foreign banks. The foreign bank he was talking about was Citibank, not the Swiss bank he often heard about. Liang Shengtao's ignorance was highlighted here. He always felt that Swiss banks were too high-end. Not to mention Lidong, there weren't many in the provincial capital. What if he wanted to withdraw money abroad and couldn't find it? On the other hand, Citibank was more friendly. It was opened in America, and there was a branch in the city. He had checked on the internet, and Citibank could be said to be open all over the world. It was in every country and city that he had heard of. So Liang Shengtao opened 5 accounts, and each account had 8 to 10 million yuan in it. The money in these 5 accounts was the key to whether Liang Shengtao could live a carefree life in the future. However, these cards were also gone. Liang Shengtao sat on the edge of the bed, feeling weak all over. The empty safe was left there, and Liang Shengtao didn't even look at it. The air in the room wasn't very good, and in this hot summer, it was stuffy and suffocating. Liang Shengtao didn't have the mood to open a window. This bad mood was mainly caused by the theft of the diamonds and gold. After all, almost half of the money that he had painstakingly plundered was given to someone else. No one would be willing to accept it. But what was the use of being unwilling? After all, Liang Shengtao was a person in a high position. After sitting in a daze for a while, he woke up from this heavy blow. There were no more cards, but Liang Shengtao still had the card numbers. The information of these accounts was recorded in a small book at home, and the password was stored in Liang Shengtao's brain. He didn't believe that someone could steal the password from his brain. As long as he could find Citibank, Liang Shengtao could reapply for the cards. Even if he didn't reapply, he could withdraw money using the account numbers. The 50 million yuan would still be his. The most important thing now was to get his wife and children, take the small book, and escape from Lidong or even abroad. As long as he wasn't caught by the Commission for Discipline Inspection, there was still hope. Liang Shengtao's fingernails dug deep into his palms. He finally began to suppress his vexed thoughts and stood up. He couldn't delay any longer. According to the news from the meeting, this incident was very big. He didn't know when the Commission for Discipline Inspection would see the news on the internet. What Liang Shengtao didn't expect was that the day before Poplar Fruit asked Fat Dragon to spread the news, they had already put all the evidence on the desktop of the Municipal Commission for Discipline Inspection and the Provincial Commission for Discipline Inspection. One day, no matter how short it was enough for them to react. Before leaving, Liang Shengtao went to the toilet to solve the major life event that he had been holding in for the whole morning. He zipped up his pants and pressed the flush button on the toilet. Liang Shengtao didn't even look as he walked out of the toilet. Liang Shengtao would never have thought that the 2 bags of diamonds that he had been dreaming of were hidden in the water tank that was just inches away from him. Liang Shengtao went down the stairs with a gloomy face. His footsteps were very heavy, just like his age. Walking out of the corridor, Liang Shengtao pressed his car key, and his car made a soft sound. However, before he could open the car door, a few men in black, who had been lying in ambush, suddenly rushed out and pressed him to the ground. "What are you doing?" "I am Liang Shengtao, the county magistrate of Lidong County. Do you want to die?" Liang Shengtao's face was pressed to the ground. When he opened his mouth, grass and sand mixed with air flowed into his mouth. One of the men in black took out his ID and waved it in front of Liang Shengtao. He said coldly, "Deputy County Magistrate Liang, we are from the Guishan Provincial Commission for Discipline Inspection. You are suspected of corruption and bribery. Come with us." Liang Shengtao suddenly stopped moving. His eyes were wide open, and he looked like a dead pig. "I'm so dead. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk." Chapter 613. The drastic change in the county did not affect the people in the mountains. If there was any change, it would be Fat Dragon and Poplar Fruit, who smiled knowingly after putting down the phone. Xiong Kahu was much more impatient than Poplar Fruit. He had called 2 elders from the nearby Hmong villages over the previous day, and had a meeting that lasted less than half an hour before they reached a consensus. The other 2 Hmong villages had no reason to object to Xiong Kahu's suggestion of providing manpower to rebuild the school. It had nothing to do with Xiong Kahu's reputation. On one hand, it was because the Xiong village was the location for the school. It was the closest to the other Hmong villages and had the most people. On the other hand, Poplar Fruit, who was a foreign Han, had paid for all the expenses. He had spent so much effort to make sure that his child could attend school. All he did was contribute some manpower. It would be unreasonable for him to be calculative. Hence, he saw the bustling scene in the Xiong village that day. Although the 3 Hmong villages were rather remote, they had to earn their own living most of the time. Hence, there were many capable people. The school's redesign was done by an elder from another Hmong village called Tung Chi. Tung Chi was a surname of the Miao people. Their own Han surname was He. This master, he looked like a farmer. His skin was dark, and he was wearing a straw hat. But in fact, he had a great background. Back when Xiong Kahu joined the army, he responded to the call and followed him. However, he was not as skilled in martial arts as Xiong Kahu was. He was just a mountain man with slightly better stamina. Hence, the army that master he joined was a basic one. The class he was in was called the Civil Engineering class, which was commonly known as the engineers. Since they were engineers, they did not charge into enemy lines. They moved with the army and were responsible for burying mines, clearing mines, and building houses. They built simple and hidden command posts. It was at that time that master he learned some civil engineering skills. After retiring from the army, master he did not live in seclusion like Xiong Kahu. He stayed in the big cities to make a living. He set up a construction team and built houses in several big cities in Guishan province. It was said that his greatest achievement was building the tallest 18-story building in Lupan at that time. Most of the blueprints were drawn by himself. From the time he entered the army, he knew nothing about them. Later on, he could easily draw them. Grandpa he had put in a lot of effort in this aspect. Unfortunately, the business world was cruel. Master he was cheated by his partner, who took away all the money from the construction team. In the end, master he sold his house to pay the workers and returned to the Hmong village disheartened. He never thought of leaving the mountain again. Although he didn't go out of the mountain again, Grandpa he was still a big authority in the area of building houses. After he returned, he pondered over the design concept of tall buildings. Later on, when he designed houses for a few people in the stronghold, the tall buildings incorporated a modern architectural style and were quite popular with the villagers. The original school was designed by Grandpa he. Now, after listening to Poplar Fruit's request, he redrew the design and finally came up with a modified plan. The original school didn't need to be rebuilt. They only needed to tear down a few non-load-bearing walls and replaced them with new ones. This greatly reduced the amount of work needed to rebuild the school, and saved a lot of money. Cement and bricks had to be bought from the city, and were given to Xiongjijiao at the foot of the mountain. As for the other wood, it was simple. They lived in the forest and could get everything locally. The bustle in the stronghold these 2 days was the noise of the 3 Miao men going deep into the mountains to cut down trees and bamboo, and then bringing them back. Poplar Fruit was naturally involved. Although he was now a scholar, he used to be a village boy. It wasn't like he had never done dirty work. Seeing that everyone was working in full swing, Poplar Fruit rolled up his sleeves and rushed forward, ignoring Zheng Yujia's objection. Poplar Fruit wasn't very good at cutting down trees, but he helped carry them back. Poplar Fruit's strength came in handy. Generally speaking, a tree trunk with branches cut off, although it was only as thick as a calf, could only be moved by 3 people at the front, middle, and back. They also had to rest a few times along the way. On the other hand, Yanggua carried the trunk and walked forward alone. He didn't do it in a relaxed manner, but he wasn't tired to the point where he was out of breath. He carried the trunk back to the stronghold, and on the way, he still had the energy to greet his daughter. "Kiki, look at Daddy, isn't Daddy awesome?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Kiki stood in the circle of friends. It wasn't easy for her to see through the cover of a few leaves that the tall man who was holding a tree, and whose clothes were cut in several places, was her dearest father. She cried out in surprise and ran to her father's side with small steps. "Papa is awesome." Her small mouth was round. She wanted to laugh excitedly, but she also wanted to show her surprise when she saw Lu Zhishan uproot the weeping willow. Anyway, she looked like a little goldfish, so cute. "Kiki, come here." "Ignore him." Zheng Yujie was still angry because Poplar Fruit didn't listen to her advice. At this time, Poplar Fruit looked very manly. The rolled-up short sleeves and the white t-shirt that was cut by the branches on his abdomen revealed a different side of Poplar Fruit, who was usually weak and scholarly. His sweaty and strong abdominal muscles were more explosive than those of a pure gym muscle man. However, Zheng Yujie turned a blind eye to it. She was panting with anger. She always felt that Poplar Fruit shouldn't ignore his identity and run to carry bricks like a migrant worker. What was this? No. Kiki wants to help Papa move the tree. Kiki's voice was clear, but her momentum was soft and very pleasant to the ears. She moved closer to Poplar Fruit, regardless of whether her father had the time to talk to her. Poplar Fruit really didn't have a free hand. Although he could carry the tree trunk, it was a bit difficult. If he wanted to hold the tree trunk with one hand, it would be better for him to break the world record of weightlifting. Poplar Fruit was just an ordinary person who was stronger than ordinary people. "Hey Kiki, be careful. Don't get poked in the eyes." Poplar Fruit quickly stood still while holding the tree and didn't dare to move. Chi-Chi walked recklessly to the back and hugged one of the hanging tree trunks. She tried to exert her strength, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move this huge thing. Poplar Fruit really didn't want to spoil his daughter's mood, and also didn't want to pour cold water on his daughter, who was kind to help. He could only half squat and strictly control the strength of his hand, giving Kiki the feeling that she was also using all her strength. Poplar Fruit was still shouting, "Kiki, pay attention. Tilt your head back a little bit. Slowly, let's take a step forward. 1, 2, 1. The excitement on Kiki's face didn't diminish. She also hugged the tree and shouted 1, 2, 1 with her father. Poplar Fruit was actually more tired like this. However, tiredness was nothing. He also enjoyed it. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations, greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 614. Zheng Yujie had a quarrel with Poplar Fruit. Was it really just because of Poplar Fruit's incessant persuasion? Queen Zheng was not that narrow-minded. Poplar Fruit ran into the deep mountains without any regard for his own safety, and came back in ragged clothes. That was just an excuse for Zheng Yujie's outburst. The real reason why Zheng Yujie had been suppressing her anger for days was that she was going back to the capital. This time, no one forced her to go back to the capital. Although her family complained about her leaving without saying goodbye, they didn't ask her to go back. Zheng Yujie had no choice but to go back. A few days ago, she had discussed with Poplar Fruit about setting up a publishing house that belonged to her, or to Zheng Yujie and herself. At least, that was how Zheng Yujie saw it. Later, Zheng Yujie had discussed with Poplar Fruit a few more times. After that, they had more or less settled on this plan. Now that she had a plan, Zheng Yujie started to make preparations without stopping. Putting aside the market research and the selection of the publishing house that she was about to acquire, she also needed to make preparations for leaving Dongxin Publishing. She had nothing to miss about Dongxin Publishing. Launching the translation of Poplar Fruit's novel, Young School, into the market was her last stand. In addition, Zheng Yujie also planned to persuade some of her key editors to leave with her. On this point, Zheng Yujie wasn't worried that Dongxin Publishing would take revenge on her. On one hand, the focus of their business would be different in the future. On the other hand, Dongxin Publishing didn't dare to do anything to Zheng Mingxing's daughter and Zheng Jianhua's granddaughter. Dongxin Publishing was a state-owned enterprise. Losing a few people would be a loss to the country. They didn't need to make things difficult for the Zheng family. On the other hand, Zheng Yujie had to communicate with the chief editor, Pang Yu. Pang Yu was her elder, and also her mother's good friend. From another point of view, he was also Zheng Yujie's guide in this line. Pang Yu wouldn't stop Zheng Yujie from developing her career, but Zheng Yujie didn't want to leave any grudges in Aunt Pang Yu's heart. In addition to dealing with the publishing house, Zheng Yujie also planned to negotiate with several online literature websites that owned a large number of copyrights. Now that the foreign language copyrights of those websites were cheap, Zheng Yujie would take the opportunity to get all of them. Of course, this matter wouldn't be as simple as it seemed. They didn't think that the copyrights were worth much. However, if you really wanted to buy all of them at a cheap price, you might arouse their vigilance. Then, they might not sell the copyrights and wait for the best price. That was possible. However, Zheng Yujie had other plans. She would negotiate with them first and buy them at a reasonable price. If they deliberately raised the price, Zheng Yujie wouldn't mind using the power behind her to compete with them. Zheng Yujie had no choice but to return. As for her, she had only reunited with Yang Guo for a few days, and then they had to part. Afterwards, she wouldn't be able to see Yang Guo for a few months. She was very reluctant to part, but she couldn't say it out loud. The reason for this was very complicated. On one hand, Zheng Yujie had a strong personality. It would be better to kill her if she cried because of love. On the other hand, she felt that she didn't have the status to vent her reluctance. Yes, she and Poplar Fruit were just close friends. She wasn't like the girl who secretly talked to Poplar Fruit on the phone at night. She could act coquettishly, and even throw a tantrum at Poplar Fruit unscrupulously. This kind of emotion was even more intense, especially when Poplar Fruit was unwilling to do some very intimate and ambiguous interactions with her recently. Although Poplar Fruit carefully took her feelings into consideration, Zheng Yujie still faintly felt that Poplar Fruit was keeping a distance from her. From the beginning, she was mentally prepared. Zheng Yujie kept telling herself not to mind. She gritted her teeth and swore that even if he walked with another woman, she would persist. She would use her actions to make Poplar Fruit fall in love with her. Yes, Zheng Yujie had always believed that she and Poplar Fruit would have a happy day. This kind of thinking was very rare in this impetuous society. Not to mention a girl like Zheng Yujie, who came from an extraordinary family. Even a girl from an ordinary family would have her own dignity and reserve. Who would be like Zheng Yujie, who persevered for a man who had already fallen in love with another woman? Duan Xueqing wouldn't. After she understood that it was impossible for her and Poplar Fruit to be together, she rationally left Poplar Fruit. She didn't want to wait for more than 4 years like before. She also didn't want to be drowned in heartache like a tide. Perhaps leaving would hurt, but when she met someone else who might be suitable, the pain would slowly fade away. Well, this kind of persistence was rare in the world, but it didn't mean that it didn't exist. Jin Yuelin was such an example. Back then, even if Lin Huiyin had already married Liang Xiqing, who was the most suitable for her, even if Jin Yuelin was very rational and hid his love deep in his heart, even if he became lifelong friends with the couple, Jin Yuelin still deeply loved this woman who was beautiful and talented. Jin Yuelin wasn't like the more famous Su Zimo. The latter divorced his first wife after falling in love with Lin Huiying. It was also because of Lin Huiying that he wrote many love poems. However, after Lin Huiying got married, he fell in love with another woman. Jin Yuelin never married, and he was infatuated and waited for Lin Huiying his entire life. There was an anecdote about Elder Jin. It was said that after Lin Huiying passed away, Elder Jin invited a guest to a restaurant in the capital. When his old friends received the invitation, they were all puzzled. They didn't know why Elder Jin was spending so much money. It wasn't until the banquet that Elder Jin explained in disappointment that today was Huiying's birthday. The world might not understand Elder Jin's infatuation, and they might even feel that it wasn't worth it. Zheng Yujie was the same. She loved Poplar Fruit. She loved his personality and talent. She loved his gentleness and thoughtfulness. In her heart, Poplar Fruit was the only one in this life. This had nothing to do with whether Poplar Fruit loved her or not. This logic was very difficult to understand. However, this was love. This was the kind of love that made people make choices that were unimaginable to onlookers. However, Zheng Yujie wasn't as extraordinary as Elder Jin. She would still be jealous and sad. After these emotions had accumulated for a few days, she finally couldn't help but explode with a small matter. Poplar Fruit, who had a low EQ, was muddle-headed. Naturally, he wouldn't think of this aspect. He thought that Zheng Yujie was angry because he let her down. That night, he tried his best to apologize to Zheng Yujie. He even offered his not-so-perfect rabbit wood carving as an apology. In front of the person she liked, Zheng Yujie's anger came strangely and disappeared strangely. After she took the rabbit wood carving, she actually smiled. She smiled very happily, but there were still some tears in the corners of her eyes. The next day, Poplar Fruit sent Zheng Yujie to the airport in the neighboring city to take a plane. Before boarding the plane, Yang Guo's deliberate courtesy did not succeed. Queen Zheng did not allow him to say anything and tightly hugged him. In the end, Queen Zheng put down little brother Yang in satisfaction. She waved her hand and left with her somewhat long hair. Her unruly back view was still so elegant. Queen Zheng has returned to Beijing. Poplar Fruit is also about to return to Yangcheng. Xiao Han has been in Guishan province for a long time. Everyone is probably tired of it. Don't worry, this part will be over soon. However, Xiao Han still has to say that the reason why he wrote so much in this part was not because Xiao Han wanted to deliberately add water. I believe that some readers have already seen that July and August 2012 was the time when the two most important careers in Poplar Fruit's life took off. It was also a watershed for this book. Poplar Fruit was an ordinary person who didn't know how to sing or act. It wasn't easy for him to get on the big stage of "Where Are We Going, Dad?" His modeling experience in October might be one of the reasons, but it definitely wasn't the decisive factor. What was it? Let's guess. In addition, regarding the love story of this book, Xiao Han said a few more words. Fang Beibei doesn't seem to be very liked by everyone. It's okay, everyone still doesn't know her well enough. Her scenes will slowly increase in the future. Queen Zheng isn't the female lead. This has been emphasized all along. But Queen Zheng is very important. Or rather, Xiao Han really likes Queen Zheng's character. Xiao Han won't write her as tragic as Elder Jin. He can only say that he will give everyone an explanation in the ending. Xiao Han doesn't dare to say that everyone will be 100% satisfied, but the ending will definitely not be a tragedy. Xiao Han swears in the name of Kiki. *0 everyone. Please read on patiently. Xiao Han wants to write a different story. He wants to write an ordinary but destined to be extraordinary Poplar Fruit. Chapter 6:15. Hurry up and get up. Why are you still sleeping in the middle of the day? Hurry up and run with this old man. Sob sob, it's only 7 o'clock. Old man, can you let me sleep a little longer? Get up, don't get up. My saber doesn't recognize birds. Clang. Such conversations were repeated in Poplar Fruit's room. For some unknown reason, or since when Xiong Kahu and Fat Dragon, this pair of enemies, had been at loggerheads. Fat Dragon was a night owl, the kind that was especially fat. He slept very late at night, sometimes even later than poplar fruit's 2 or 3 o'clock. Then he slept in the middle of the day, not eating breakfast and not waking up until lunchtime. Xiongkahu once strolled over to Poplar Fruit's place. Seeing Fat Dragon sleeping like a pig, he came over every morning to wake him up for a run. Xiongkahu's reason was to let Fat Dragon develop good habits and lose weight. Look at you. You're so fat that you're almost heavier than my daughter-in-law's flour. Hurry up and exercise. Don't sit in front of the table every day. Be careful that you don't die before you're 40. Fatty Dragon strongly suspected that Xiongkahu was abusing his position for personal gain. He was deliberately making things difficult for him. Early in the morning, Xiongkahu wanted to kill such a good opportunity to sleep. It was too inhumane. But what could he do? Xiongkahu would always come to find him after practicing with Poplar Fruit on the mountain. With 2 Miaodao in his hands, Fat Dragon refused to get up from the bed. With the first slash, Fat Dragon's pants would have a large hole. With the second slash, Fat Dragon would feel a chill in his lower body with his eyes closed. Half of his hair would flutter in the air like catkins in the spring wind. This time it was like lightning. A chill ran up his spine and soaked his entire brain. Fat Dragon was finally awake. He was completely awake and did not feel sleepy at all. Without waiting for the third stab, Fat Dragon scrambled out of bed and followed Xiongkahu for a jog with tears and snot. Old Master Xiongkahu did not torture him any further. He took him for a jog around the village before letting him go back. Although it was just a jog, although it was only 2 laps, Fat Dragon was already as tired as a dog when he came back. He was lying on the bed, unable to move. However, the effect was still good. Later, Fat Dragon no longer stayed up late at night and ran 2 laps during the day. His mental state also improved a lot. Of course, his weight still did not decrease. These few days did not show any effect. On the second day after Zheng Yujie went back, Poplar Fruit received a call that surprised him. The reason why it was a surprise was because this brother of his was really unpredictable. Sometimes when Poplar Fruit called to ask about him, his phone would often be turned off. And when he called Poplar Fruit, it was either early in the morning, late at night, or during dinner time. Anyway, none of his calls were on time. Seeing the caller ID, Poplar Fruit smiled. He picked up the phone and said with a smile, "Big brother, you're back from your mission? I just came back. F***ck, this time I've been busy for a month. It's not easy to get a few days off, and you're still in Guishan?" Wenjua's rough voice came from the phone, still as unruly as before. "Hey big brother, how do you know I'm in Guishan?" Poplar Fruit felt very magical. The last time the two talked, he had just experienced the disaster of Kiki, and had just arrived in Kaiyun province. Logically speaking, even if Wenjua didn't ask if he was in Kaiyun province, he should have asked if he had returned to Guangdong province. "Hee you brat, you encountered such a big thing in Guishan province and didn't ask me for help. You're hiding it, right?" Wenjua laughed and said, "Our public security department has already informed me. They checked your license plate number and asked about it here." Poplar Fruit now understood that it should be Lu Guoyang who asked them to check. However, what he didn't know was that if Lu Guoyang himself checked, the police in Guangdong province wouldn't know. It was all his gossipy lover who caused the trouble. "Hee big brother, there's no need to trouble you for such a small matter." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. "Besides, aren't I in Guishan Mountain? It's so far away. I don't want to trouble you." "What are you talking about?" Wenjua was unhappy. He said, "You think that your big brother he is too far away to help, and can't help much at your mountain, right? I want to tell you a fact. Before my father came to Guangdong province, he was a soldier in the Shudu military region for 5 years. Now the deputy political commissar of Shudu is my father's comrade-in-arms in the same class. You tell me, can I help you?" Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Well, big brother, I was wrong. I should have looked for you first at that time. Forget it, let's not talk about you. You couldn't find me at that time." Wenjua waved his hand and said, "How is it now? Is the little policeman in Guishan still bothering you? What's the matter?" Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, but still told Wenjua what had happened, and then said, "It's all solved now. The deputy county magistrate and his subordinates have been arrested, including the director of the Public Security Bureau. You're killing a pig with a butcher's knife. Hyewonjwa seriously criticized Poplar Fruit and said, "Do you need to take such a big risk to steal the account book for such a small matter? You can tell Big Brother, and I'll let my father talk to them. Can't it be solved easily?" "I didn't know you had connections here," Poplar Fruit complained. "Forget it, this matter is over. Next time, you can't be so reckless. You can't use your kung fu like this." Hyewonjwa didn't hold on to this matter. He asked curiously, "By the way, why did you stay in Gyeongsang province for so long? Aren't you about to start school?" Poplar Fruit told him what he was doing. Hyewonjwa expressed his approval of Poplar Fruit's kindness, but he wasn't too interested. Instead, Hyewonjwa took Poplar Fruit's words to heart that he still needed to learn Miaodao for 2 more days and understand the essence of the moves before returning to Yang City. "What Miaodao? Which master did you meet?" Hyewonjwa asked excitedly. He knew how powerful Poplar Fruit's kung fu was. If Poplar Fruit was interested in someone, it must be a master above the master level. "Master Xiongkahu. His two-handed Miaodao is very powerful. By the way, he used to be a special forces soldier, but at that time, he was called a scout. He was very famous during the war with Nanyue." Poplar Fruit proudly introduced his master. "Wait, what did you say? Xiongkahu?" The Saber King Xiongkahu, who was known as one of the top 10 soldier kings in the southwest 30 years ago? Is it really Xiongkahu? Hyewonjwa was so excited that he was incoherent. Poplar Fruit felt that Big Brother. He was a little fanatical, like a fan who saw his idol. With Poplar Fruit's confirmation, Hyewonjwa could no longer suppress the joy in his heart. "Poplar Fruit, wait, don't move. I want to go, I want to go." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 6:16. Test, cough, cough. Children, did you hear Teacher Poplar Fruit's speech? Poplar Fruit tapped on the microphone in front of the camera and smiled slightly. Yes. Xiong Xiaolin, who was sitting with a straight face, answered with a straight face. You could tell from her voice. Xiong Xiaofeng, on the other hand, was leading the other children in giggling. Most of them were swaying left and right, and including Chi-Chi, they were all shouting very happily. "I heard it, hee, I heard it." "You heard it." Kiki said she heard it. Fonggugu said he heard it too. Kiki also screamed without backing down. Poplar Fruit, who was upstairs, could hear her voice. "Everyone sit properly. Listen to Poplar Fruit. Oh, listen to the teacher's lecture." Xiongkahu sat next to the projector and said to the naughty children while blowing his beard and glaring at them. In the end, the tribe leader's prestige was great. Once he opened his mouth, the chaotic children quieted down, lowered their heads, and obediently sat back in their seats. Everyone is very obedient. That's good. Let's start the lecture today. Poplar Fruit smiled at the microphone and said, "Today Teacher Yang will teach you the 48 phonetic symbols of English. Other than Yang Luochi and Xiong Xiaolin, the child who is the most enthusiastic and answers the questions the best can come with me to the county to play tomorrow. Teacher will treat you to a big meal." Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, the children immediately straightened their backs and looked eagerly at Poplar Fruit on the screen. They were eager to give it a try. For these Miao children who stayed in the mountains all year round, not to mention a big meal, even a trip to the county to play was a very extravagant wish. Little Fonggu Yangluachi is Kiki's name. Sitting on a small stool, Kiki couldn't help but turn her head and whisper to Xiong Xiaofeng. "Kiki, don't whisper to each other. Sit tight and listen to the lecture." Poplar Fruit's voice was very gentle as he grabbed the little girl. This was clearly transmitted to Poplar Fruit's projector through the camera and the network. In this way, a corresponding virtual classroom was formed. Yanghua could teach in front of the camera and the projector about the children's situation. Although it was an online lecture, Poplar Fruit's simulation was no different from a real classroom. The teacher was still teaching, and the children were listening. The only difference was that the teacher became an image on the screen and was connected by the network. This was only the first attempt, And because the school was in full swing to demolish and build a new house, Poplar Fruit asked Fat Dragon to move the equipment to Xiongji's house. The main classroom was set up in the lobby on the first floor. It was spacious and could seat 10 children, which were the children selected by Poplar Fruit to cooperate with him. Poplar Fruit's classroom was only on the second floor, which was next to Poplar Fruit's. After Zheng Yujie went back, Poplar Fruit cleaned the room and let Fat Dragon arrange various equipment. The remote education classroom that Poplar Fruit planned to build was more luxurious and advanced than the current simple classroom. Now the children all had small desks and laptops. There were no computers for them to use because the more than 300 custom-made computers by Poplar Fruit had not been delivered yet. At present, the only 3 computers were used by Fat Dragon as transfer equipment. When the computers arrived, the children did not need to look up at the projector screen as hard as they did now. The images would be transmitted to the computer screen on their desks through Fat Dragon's server. After a lesson, Poplar Fruit asked the children to go home. He went downstairs and discussed the problems encountered in the morning with Fat Dragon. Let me say one first. You can't leave no one on this mountain. Fat Dragon tapped on the keyboard and pulled out the interactive software that he thought was insufficient. Then he modified it and said to Poplar Fruit, I don't think Uncle Xiong and the others know how to use these devices. What if they malfunction? Regarding this problem, Poplar Fruit said confidently, you can write a manual for the use of the devices and simple maintenance methods. We can let one of them learn it. Then we won't need to stay on the mountain anymore. Speaking of this, Poplar Fruit turned to Xiong Kehu and Xiong Jiwu, who were sitting and watching, and said, Master and Brother Jiwu, I have a proposal to discuss with you. Xiong Kehu waved his hand and said casually, discuss what? If there's anything you need from us, just tell us. We don't know what you're talking about. Over the past few days, although Xiong Kehu didn't say anything, he admired and was grateful to his disciple. It had nothing to do with the two-handed Miaodao he taught Poplar Fruit. These days, Poplar Fruit was busy running around and working hard for the education of the children in the village. Not only did he spend money, but he also did his best. Xiong Kehu saw it all, but he kept it in his heart. In this regard, Xiong Kehu worked very hard when he taught Poplar Fruit the two-handed Miaodao in the morning. He didn't hide anything and completely trained Poplar Fruit as his last disciple. He even taught Poplar Fruit his life's combat experience. At present, in terms of knife skills, Poplar Fruit was already a super master who was invincible in the entire Xiong village. Even Xiong Kehu himself felt that he couldn't beat Poplar Fruit. Of course, this was also related to age. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Master, look at what you're saying. How can you let me make the decision for everything? After all, my ability is limited. Everyone has to discuss and gather the wisdom of the group. Only then can we arrange things properly and avoid detours in the future. When the class just started, you saw it too, Master. The children weren't sitting very well. Even during the class, there were some children who were whispering to each other, or being absent-minded. Fortunately, Master was there, so there wasn't any trouble. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, but it can't go on like this. In the future, we'll be in a city hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. If the children suddenly run out to play by themselves midway, we won't be able to control them. It's okay. This old man can just keep an eye on them. Xiong Kehu waved his hand and said indifferently, it's not a big deal. If that child doesn't listen, just grab him and give him 2 whips. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Master, we don't need this kind of stick education anymore. Beating the children to force them to study is a bad idea. The best way is for us teachers to give the children some more attractive classroom education, so that they can voluntarily study hard. This is what we want to see. Besides, Master, you're the chief and have to deal with the affairs of the village. We can't let you sit in this classroom with the children every day, right? Poplar Fruit said. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 6:17. One moment, you say that you can't do it without me, and the next moment, you say that you don't need me. What exactly do you want? Xiongkahu obviously wasn't as patient as Poplar Fruit. He was very hot-tempered, and his dissatisfaction was followed by a clamor. To be honest, Poplar Fruit was a little long-winded. This was related to his personality. Most of the people who were willing to be teachers and deal with children were the type of people who were resistant to hardships. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Master, don't worry. I'm thinking that since Brother Ji Woo doesn't have a job now, it's not realistic to ask him to do farming or work. Why don't we ask Brother Ji Woo to be the children's teacher?" Before Poplar Fruit finished speaking, Xiong Ji Woo blushed and waved his hand. Poplar Fruit, no, I haven't even studied for a few years. How can I teach children? Yes. This won't work. He doesn't even know how to teach, Xiongkahu said firmly. You can sympathize with Ji Woo, but you can't harm the children. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Master and Brother Ji Woo, you didn't hear me out. I'm talking about being a teacher, not asking you to teach. We can teach. You as a teacher mainly have to manage the children and supervise them to go to class and do their homework on time. Also, you have to control our equipment and deal with some unexpected situations. For example, if a child gets into a fight, you have to educate them in time. If the machine breaks down, you have to rush to repair it or report to us for a replacement. Xiong Jiwoo understood this time, but he still shook his head and said with some uncertainty, I don't know how to use these machines, let alone repair them. You can learn if you don't know. Poplar Fruit smiled. Who was born knowing how to do it? Don't worry, I'll let Fat Dragon stay on the mountain until he teaches you. Poplar Fruit pretended not to see Fat Dragon's sad little eyes. Poplar Fruit's words are reasonable. Who was born knowing how to do it? Xiongkahu clapped his hands and said happily, Xiaowu, what Poplar Fruit said just now is really the most suitable thing for you to do. It's not that I want to criticize you, but with your legs, you can't do any other job well. Why don't you take care of the children in the village? Poplar Fruit chose Xiong Jiwoo as their class teacher not because he sympathized with Xiong Jiwoo, but just as Xiongkahu said. Xiong Jiwoo was the most suitable person for this job. Xiong Jiwoo had a good personality, especially when he got along with the children in the stockade. Many of them liked him. It was reasonable to say that the children should be afraid when they saw Xiong Jiwoo with a lame leg, but Xiong Jiwoo was the opposite. He was not as muscular as the other adult men in the Hmong village, nor was he like Xiongkahu, who always had a poker face. He was humble and liked to chat with the children. Usually, if there was anything delicious, he would share it with the children who came over as guests. Therefore, Xiong Jiwoo was the most amiable person in the eyes of the children in the Hmong village, and the children were happy to listen to him. Not only that, but because Xiong Jiwoo had trained Xiong Xiaolin, who was admitted to the county's key middle school, this was an unprecedented event in the village. Many aunties came to visit Xiong Jiwoo to learn from him. If Xiong Jiwoo helped to take care of such a naughty child, the parents would be more relieved. Speaking of which, the class teacher that Poplar Fruit mentioned was not an ordinary class teacher. There would be more than 300 children studying in the entire school, and the 1st to 6th grades would be divided into 6 classes. Xiong Jiwoo would have to take care of the children in the 6 classes at the same time. He would be the class teacher who was at the level of a principal. However, in order to repay Poplar Fruit, Xiongkahu waved his hand and removed the position of principal under Poplar Fruit's name without any explanation. Therefore, Xiong Jiwoo could only be the class teacher. This was just a difference in name. For the principal of the Hmong village's primary school who had no real power, this title was just a symbol of honor. It was unrealistic for one person to keep an eye on 6 grades, even though there were only 6 classes in total. Poplar Fruit taught Xiong Jiwoo a good idea. You can let each class elect a class monitor, vice class monitor, or take turns to help you manage the class. This will not only improve your efficiency, but also strengthen the children's sense of self-discipline. I believe that the children who are working as cadres will definitely work harder. This method had long been used by the schools in the city. Some children even cultivated a sense of bureaucracy from an early age. In the middle of last year, the news of the teenager with 5 bars in Wuching caused a large-scale discussion. Poplar Fruit would not let the children become cold politicians. But introducing the class committee system could still help to integrate the current scattered Hmong village schools. Poplar Fruit also taught Xiong Jiwoo a lot of skills of being a class director. He did not have much experience, but last semester, in order to be a qualified teaching assistant, Poplar Fruit found a lot of books in this field to read. At least he could talk about armchair strategies for a day and a half. Of course, Poplar Fruit just said that he would give Xiong Jiwoo additional training in the future. These skills gave Xiong Jiwoo a lot of inspiration and restored his confidence. However, Xiong Jiwoo was still a little hesitant. Poplar Fruit understood what he was thinking. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Brother Jiwoo, don't worry. I won't let you work for nothing. I'll give you 1,500 yuan a month, the same as the county's teachers. You help to take care of the children and deal with the school's affairs. This can be considered a proper job. I'm not asking for money. This is not appropriate." Money was what Xiong Jiwoo lacked the most at the moment. Xiong Xiaolin had to study in the county, and Yi Nuzhang had to eat some good food to nourish her body. Although Poplar Fruit had left him a few thousand yuan, Poplar Fruit had helped their family so much. Xiong Jiwoo was still thinking about when to return the money to Poplar Fruit. Xiong Kehu thought for a while and said, "Jiwoo, Poplar Fruit is right. You should take the money. And Poplar Fruit, you don't have to pay for this money. I'll discuss with the elders of the other 2 strongholds. We'll each pay a part of it. We can't let you work for nothing. You also have a family to support." "That's too much," Xiong Jiwoo said somewhat embarrassedly. "Everyone in the village goes out to work and doesn't send more than 1,000 yuan back home every month. If I take so much, I'll be envied. Besides, I didn't do much. I just helped to take care of the children. If I take the same amount as the teacher, I'll feel uneasy." "What's there to feel uneasy about?" Xiong Kehu said angrily. "If anyone is not pleasing to the eye, tell them to come to me. I'll beat them to death." However, Xiong Jiwoo was unwilling to accept such a high salary of 1,500 yuan. Poplar Fruit's brain worked very quickly. He immediately came up with a new idea. "How about this? Brother Jiwoo, you can take the monthly salary of 900 yuan for the time being. Later, we'll discuss the agenda and raise it. In addition, I want sister-in-law to go to the school to help. What she needs to do is to cook for the children. Don't some of the students in our school come from the 2 strongholds next door? It will take them at least half an hour to come here. Don't go back at noon. Stay at the school and eat. Our family will give sister-in-law some food expenses every month. We'll discuss the amount later. This is convenient for the children, and can also give sister-in-law something to do. That's a good idea." Xiong Kehu clapped and laughed. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 618. Kiki, look, I caught a white-eyed sparrow. In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit and Kiki, who had just taken a nap, were washing their faces in the room. A boy from Miao village ran in excitedly. His feet were dark, and there was a lot of sand in the crevices. Poplar Fruit recognized the child. He smiled and patted his little head, saying in Miao language, "Anshuan, did you forget where you left your shoes again? Hurry up and find them and put them on. Your mother will beat you again later." Xiong Anshuan was still a little afraid of Poplar Fruit, but at this time the children were all newborn calves. He was not afraid anymore. He said loudly, "Father Kiki, I know where it is. It's under the tree. I won't lose it." The children in the mountains were excellent at climbing trees and digging out bird nests. Poplar Fruit did not say anything, but he secretly told himself that he must do a good job of educating Kiki. He could not let a girl climb trees. It was too dangerous. "Brother, the bird is so pitiful. Can you not hold it?" When Chi-Chi saw the small and exquisite bird that was held in Xiong Anshuan's little hand with its wings clamped, her bodhisattva heart that bemoaned the state of the universe and pitied the fate of mankind came up again. Her big watery eyes looked pitifully at Xiong Anshuan and said, Xiong Anshuan did not expect that his behavior, which was like presenting a treasure, would be seen as an evil act of bullying the bird in Kiki's eyes. After hearing Kiki's pleading, Xiong Anshuan quickly put the bird behind him and said loudly, "No. It was not easy for me to catch it. No, no. Kiki pouted her lower lip, turned around, and pulled Poplar Fruit's trousers sadly and said, "Oh, Papa, the bird is so pitiful." Poplar Fruit bent down and patted his daughter's little head. He smiled and said to Xiong Anshuan, "Anshuan, come show uncle what kind of bird it is." Xiong Anshuan was still very vigilant. He covered his back with his hands and refused to take it. He shook his head and said, "No, you will snatch it from me. The white-eyed sparrow is mine." Kiki, who was overly worried that Xiong Anshuan would suffocate the bird, had tears in her eyes. She tugged at her father's arm with a pitiful look on her face, as if she could empathize with the bird's plight. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted the nervous Xiong Anshuan. "No, uncle just wants to see what kind of bird it is. How can there be a white-eyed sparrow? We are called white-eyed sparrows." Xiong Anshuan took the bird back and pointed it out to Poplar Fruit. "Abba Kiki, look, its eyes are white." Poplar Fruit took a closer look. It was a small, brown-feathered bird. Its tail feathers were very long, and like the feathers on its back, it had dark brown vertical stripes. The more conspicuous part was its eyes. Its eyes were white, and there was a long white eyebrow by its eyes, extending evenly from front to back. It looked very much like the slender and curved eyebrows of beauties in ancient literature. "Isn't this a thrush bird?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. He had a deep impression of this kind of bird, which was named because of its white eyebrows. He had seen it when he was climbing Baiyun Mountain, and it was the market bird of Yangqing City. "What is a thrush?" Poplar Fruit said the word thrush in Mandarin, so Xiong Anshuan didn't understand. He said, "It's a white-browed sparrow. My Abba taught me." Different places had different names, so Poplar Fruit didn't delve too deeply into it. When Kiki saw the pitiful thrush bird, she became even more sad. She pulled her father's finger and said with a sobbing tone, "Abba, help it, birds fly in the air, don't catch it." Poplar Fruit loved his daughter's kind heart. He looked at the thrush bird, rolled his eyes and came up with an idea. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Anshuan, uncle has a suggestion." Xiong Anshuan looked at Poplar Fruit puzzledly. "You give this bird to uncle." Before Poplar Fruit finished speaking, Xiong Anshuan immediately retracted his hand and shouted with great vigilance, "No, this is mine." Woo 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 woo. Frightened by Xiong Anshuan's shout, Kiki could no longer hold back and cried miserably. Yanghua felt a headache coming on. Sometimes, it was really hard to reason with children because they didn't have as many twists and turns as adults. They were all very straightforward. Moreover, they would definitely not listen to other people's advice, nor would they listen to it. It was already not easy to persuade Xiong Anshuan to give in. But now Kiki was crying in his ear, which made him even more annoyed. Seeing Xiong Anshuan's watery eyes, as if he was frightened by Kiki, he was worried that Poplar Fruit would bully him and try to snatch his bird, so he looked around and prepared to slip away. Poplar Fruit quickly finished his words. "Anshuan, uncle won't snatch your bird, but if you are willing to exchange, uncle can let you see a giant panda." Giant panda? Xiong Anshuan had heard of giant pandas. Gui Mountain was close to Chuan Province, and he had heard of them from the older generation of Miao tribe elders. "Yes, Kiki and I adopted a giant panda in Chuan Province. She didn't tell you, did she?" Poplar Fruit saw Xiong Anshuan's interest and knew that there was hope. He said with a smile, "There are photos and videos on the computer. Do you want to see them?" Xiong Anshuan's eyes showed a little desire. Thrush was very common in Gui Mountain, and Xiong Anshuan had caught one before. To be honest, it was nothing strange for him. As for giant pandas, although he had heard of them, he had never seen one before. This was more attractive. "Brother is a bad guy, Papa, don't show it to him." Kiki choked and said angrily. Xiong Anshuan was also a teenager, and he couldn't stand being stimulated. He immediately retorted, "Who wants to see your giant panda?" "Humph, I don't want it." Although he said this, Xiong Anshuan just curled his lips and turned his head, but his body didn't move. He was just stubborn, but he still wanted it very much. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Okay, no one is allowed to quarrel. Friends should be polite to each other and care for each other. Do you still remember the story I told you about the two little goats crossing the bridge?" Kiki and Xiong Anshuan nodded silently, and Kiki's sobs became softer and softer. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Yes, let's each take a step back. Won't we still be good friends in the future? Kiki, you have to be generous and share the photos of you and Chubby Boy with brother Anshuan. Anshuan, as a big brother, you have to give in to your little sister when she's not sensible. You can't quarrel with her, right?" Xiong Anshuan lowered his head and nodded with some embarrassment. He didn't know what Xiong Anshuan was struggling with in his heart. He hesitated for a moment, then walked forward, took Kiki's little hand and said, "Kiki, I'll give this white-eyed sparrow to you. Don't cry, okay?" Kiki saw her father take the thrush bird and then walk to the window to set it free. She smiled through her tears, and her tear-stained smiling face was especially cute. "Brother, come with me. Kiki will show you Chubby Boy," Kiki said softly with a nasal voice. At this moment, the melodious cry of the newly released thrush bird came from outside the window. It seemed to be saying thanks, and also seemed to be continuing Kiki's soft childish voice. Poplar Fruit suddenly thought of a poem. "Only then did I know to lock myself in a golden cage to listen, but not as free as the cry in the forest." Kiki understood this at such a young age. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 619. Big Brother. He was here, but he was not alone. When they heard that they were going to look for Poplar Fruit, and that there was also a legendary soldier king from the Southwest Special Forces, the martial arts enthusiasts from the Special Forces immediately followed them. Meng Sanhua had been talking about Poplar Fruit for a long time. How could he let go of such an opportunity? Big Bear, Second Bear, and Third Bear were just there for fun. They had nowhere to go during their short break, so they decided to come to Meng Village with their brothers. There was a soldier that Poplar Fruit had met before, but they did not talk much with him. This time he also came along. Big Brother Yin Luqing. Poplar Fruit had a good memory. He had only heard of Yin Liuqing's name once, so he took the initiative to extend his hand and greet Yin Luqing. "Hello." Yin Luqing was a little surprised. He looked at He Wenjua in confusion, as if he thought that the captain had told Poplar Fruit about him in advance. Yin Luqing was a pretty name, but the owner was a dark-skinned man. He was not tall, nor was he as strong as Poplar Fruit's brother Yang Zhengdong. However, his muscles were very tight, like Meng Sanhua, very explosive. Yin Luqing was carrying a long guitar case. After he opened it, Poplar Fruit realized that it was not a musical instrument, nor was it a sniper rifle that was often seen in movies. It was a knife. "Hey." Poplar Fruit realized that there were so many familiar faces, but one person was missing. "Big Brother, where is Big Brother Zhengdong?" "He didn't come," He Wenjua said. "Big Brother Dong is injured, and he is lying in the hospital," Second Bear said straightforwardly. "Injured? How did he get injured? Is it serious?" Poplar Fruit was shocked. He had a good relationship with Yang Zhengdong. When he first went to the military camp, he got to know Yang Zhengdong. Then, Yang Zhengdong taught him how to use a gun. To a certain extent, he was one of Poplar Fruit's masters. After that, Poplar Fruit went to the military camp twice, and their relationship got even better. He Wenjua actually did not want to say it, because Yang Zhengdong had told him not to worry Poplar Fruit before he came. But Second Bear had already said it, so he could only stare at him, and shook his head and said, "I was bitten when I was on a mission. It's nothing, and I'll be fine after 2 months of rest." Yang Zhengdong was indeed fine. He was wearing a bulletproof vest. He was only shot in the butt. More flesh on his butt, so he was able to Poplar Fruit in the end. Compared to other major injuries like broken limbs, Yang Zhengdong was considered lucky. At least he would be able to jump around after a few months. However, after the bullet was removed, it would take some time to recover, so he could only lie down in the military hospital. Yes, he was lying down like a puppy. When he introduced them to his big brother and the rest, it brought a lot of surprise to the Miao people, and also eased the silent atmosphere. The more down-to-earth people were, the more they worshipped the strong. Originally, the Miao people were a little estranged from He Wenjua, and the rest due to the language barrier. However, When they saw Hiwenjua and the rest taking the lead to carry a few boxes and striding with poplar fruit, they quickly recognized these outsiders. Even the shy Xiong Jishir started chatting with the simple-looking Xiongda. He forgot to mention that Xiongda's surname was not Xiong. Among the three big men, Xiongda, Xiong-er and Xiong-san, only Xiong-er's surname was Xiong. However, this nickname gave Xiong Jishir and the rest a lot of good feelings. What surprised the drivers the most was poplar fruit. No matter how they looked at him, that gentlemanly guy, who looked like a volunteer teacher, actually carried 4 big boxes by himself, hanging them with a pole. Actually, to poplar fruit, these were not heavy. If it were not for the fact that he could not carry so many boxes and was afraid of breaking them, poplar fruit could even carry 1 or 2 more. Everyone, slow down, be careful. Kai Simin, who was wearing glasses that were as thick as beer bottles, weakly commanded from behind, be careful when carrying these things. These things are very delicate. Although the 300 computers did not have to carry the bulky mainframe, they still filled up 3 trucks. More than 20 strong men from the 3 strongholds, including poplar fruit and the rest, needed to carry them for 2 days. When they finally finished, the sky was already dark. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 620. Due to the poor circuit and the Miao people's frugality, when night fell, the Xiong village looked bleak and cold from the outside. In front of the village, the shadows of the lanterns and trees swayed as if demons were dancing. Only an old man stood at the entrance of the village like a mountain, unaffected by the environment. The old man is really something. Hiwenjua whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear. In fact, it was not the first time they met Xiong Kahu. Poplar Fruit had introduced them to each other during the first 2 trips. However, at that time, Xiong Kahu was like an ordinary old man among the mountain people, not threatening at all. Although Xiong Kahu's hair and beard were all white, and his body had shrunk a little, he still stood upright in the mountain wind, as if he was the towering mountain behind him. His aura was restrained, but it still felt vigorous and majestic. Hiwenjua was not a martial arts master, so he did not feel it deeply. The one who felt it the most was Meng Sanhua, a martial arts fanatic. His eyes widened like a searchlight. Meng Sanhua did not bother to pester Poplar Fruit. Old man Xiong attracted him deeply like a magnet. Poplar Fruit smiled and ignored these violent maniacs. He took the lead to move the remaining computers into the ancestral hall. It was also a stilted building of the Miao people, but the style was more simple and solemn. Because the school was undergoing major renovation, the ancestral hall was specially emptied to store these precious computers. Papa! Xiong Xiaolin could not stop her. Kiki ran all the way into her father's arms. She pouted and said, "It's dark." Kiki is so scared. The little girl had been wanting to go down the mountain with her father, but Poplar Fruit had to carry so many boxes and had no time to take care of her. So he asked Xiong Xiaolin to control Kiki. Although Kiki did not cry or make a fuss, her aggrieved look was pitiful. Poplar Fruit didn't care that he was dirty. Anyway, he had to take a bath later. Smiling, he picked up his daughter and said, "Hey, isn't Daddy back?" "Ha! Poplar Fruit, your daughter is too gutsy. My Xiaochen dared to sleep alone when he was 2 years old," Hiwenjua said with a grin. "How can it be compared?" Poplar Fruit said unhappily. "Kiki is a girl. Besides, she's only 1.5 years old. She's still far from 2 years old." Poplar Fruit thought to himself. It was probably because Big Brother he was too rash. After returning from the military, he wanted to do something shameful with his sister-in-law. Then he left his own son in the next room. Hiwenjua laughed and said, "Only 1.5 years old? I forgot. Kiki is already so big. Your sister-in-law used to say that Kiki grew up quickly because she drank imported milk powder." "Kiki, do you still know Uncle?" Meng Sanhua probably ran back to Yonggua's side after being rejected by old Master Xiong Kahu. When he saw Chi-Chi, who had changed into Miao attire, he greeted her with a smile. The ancestral hall was still very bright, but Kiki still stared at Meng Sanhua for a long time. Meng Sanhua thought that Kiki could not recognize him, but Kiki giggled. She pulled Poplar Fruit's collar and pointed at Meng Sanhua. I recognize you. You fought with Papa and got spanked by Papa. Meng Sanhua's face turned red. He scratched his head awkwardly. He did not expect Kiki to still remember him. And Kiki actually remembered the scene 2 months ago. Poplar Fruit came to the barracks to play, and Poplar Fruit kicked him down from the air. What a disgrace. Didn't you see those naughty guys covering their mouths and laughing? Poplar Fruit also wanted to laugh, but he was too embarrassed to do so. He could only pat Kiki's little head and criticize her. Kiki, don't talk nonsense. This is Uncle Meng. Kiki is not talking nonsense. Kiki remembers everything, Kiki said as she shook her father's chin. After that, Xiongkahu invited these heroes from afar, according to his words, to his house for dinner. Of course, it was a normal meal. The only highlight was the horn wine. Horn wine was a delicate-looking utensil made from buffalo horns by the Miao people. The wine was glutinous rice-aged, and it was the Miao people's proudest creation. Previously, Yongguo didn't drink, so no one appreciated Xiongkahu's hospitality. This time, he saw that these burly men were all heroes in wine, so he took out a jar of 20-year-old wine from the cellar and poured it out. The fragrance was strong, and the color was brown like diluted honey. The gluttonous Xiong-san didn't even drink it before clapping his hands and shouting that it was good wine. Before drinking, they had to go through the etiquette of the Miao people. A few girls who were dressed gorgeously held a horn cup and fed each of them a sip of wine. Other than Poplar Fruit, who did not touch a single drop of wine, the others were not allowed to refuse. Even Fat Dragon, who had the worst alcohol tolerance, drank a cup. Wenjua drank it in one gulp, closed his eyes and savored the taste for a long time before nodding and praising. Good wine, good wine. After 2 rounds of drinking, Fat Dragon and Kai Simin both dizzily went to the table. On the other hand, Xiongkahu had just started chatting with the soldiers. You guys are called Special Forces now. At that time, we were all scouts. There was a name like Special Forces, but no one liked to use it. Xiongkahu laughed and said, we are the kind of scouts that fly on the grass, appear at night, and quietly send you to hell. Wenjua raised his cup and said with admiration, Old man, you are a great hero. In our Special Forces, who hasn't heard of your name? Southwest's top 10 soldier kings, your military exploits are illustrious. Even now you are our idol. Haha. Xiongkahu enjoyed it, but he still pretended to be humble and said, this is all in the past. When I was young, my father told me about your deeds. At that time he also participated in that war. I heard that when he returned home, the general's mansion in South Yu country still had the incantation of your scouting unit pasted up. They were afraid that you would come out in the middle of the night and wipe them all out. Haha. Wenjua reminisced with longing. Your father was also a soldier? Which unit was he from? Xiongkahu asked with interest. At that time he was from the Southwest Military Region's 663 Brigade's 3rd Regiment's 1st Battalion. You might not have heard of him. Wenjua waved his hand and said, at that time, my father was still young. He was just following the veterans to charge. Fortunately, he came back alive. Xiongkahu really hadn't heard of him, but he patted the table and said in an impassioned tone, your father was also a hero. War is about charging forward. Before the other side's cannonball is fired, he pees his pants. What's the point of fighting? Xiongkahu probably didn't expect that He Jiuming, who he praised as a hero, was now the #1 officer in Yongcheng's military region. However, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. Rice wine was aged and the alcohol content was very high. Wenjua also drank a lot. He raised his cup and shouted, old man is right. What's the point of fighting if he pees his pants? Charge! Charge! Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 621. There wasn't a single soldier who couldn't drink. After drinking, they had to get completely drunk and even act like a drunkard. Wenjua and the others were in such a state. Meng Sanhua was so drunk that he ran to the side to hug a tree and sing. Xiong-san was sitting on the ground, holding a stool and mumbling something. The others were not doing so well. Even Wenjua, who was usually steady, became a chatterbox, shaking his wine glass and talking nonstop. Xiongkahu was rarely happy. He was drunk, which worried Poplar Fruit. After all, his master was almost 70 years old. However, Xiongkahu was in good health. He did not make a fuss after getting drunk. He just sat there with a smile and looked down at everyone. He was usually serious, but now that he was drunk, he showed a bright smile. Poplar Fruit helped his master back to sleep. The rest of them were fine. Those who were not drunk were still playing finger-guessing games and drinking. Those who were drunk were left to play the sand on the ground for a while. After all, they would climb back to sleep when they sobered up. Looking at the untouched food, Poplar Fruit shook his head. The aging of the rice wine was really strong. They got into the mood so quickly that they did not even have time to eat 2 mouthfuls of food to suppress their drunkenness. Poplar Fruit did not eat much himself. At first he was feeding Kiki, but when he turned around, they were all lying on the ground. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Poplar Fruit laughed and ate heartily. He had a big appetite and liked to eat meat. On the mountain he did not dare to eat too much at Xiongji's house. The few pieces of meat he had were given to the children first. So today was the most sumptuous meal he had since he came up the mountain. Da-da-da. Good times did not last long. Poplar Fruit heard a series of crisp footsteps. He did not need to turn around to know that his daughter had run back. "Aren't you going to play with your friends?" Poplar Fruit smiled and picked up a green vegetable with his chopsticks. He turned to Kiki and asked, "Do you want some vegetables?" Kiki pouted and shook her head. She still didn't like eating vegetables. She would only eat a little when her father forced her to eat. Now that her father was using a questioning tone, Kiki's choice was very decisive. "Stop pouting." Poplar Fruit put down his chopsticks and fiddled with Kiki's little mouth with his clean fingers. He smiled and said, "How many times have I told you? Be careful that you don't turn into a pig in the future." The moment he said this, the smug Chi-Chi quickly pursed her lips. Kiki struggled to climb onto the chair next to her father. Unfortunately, the little guy was too short, and her obedient pad, Gold, was now hiding in the room with its tail between its legs. Kiki tried twice, but she still couldn't climb up. "What do you want to eat? Papa will get it for you. You don't have to climb up," Poplar Fruit said. He stopped Kiki, who didn't give up. This chair was different from the one at home. It wasn't stable. Even if Kiki climbed up, Poplar Fruit was worried that she wouldn't be able to sit steadily and fall down. "It stinks, it stinks." Kiki fanned her little hand in front of her nose and said with disgust, "Papa, let's go back and take a bath, okay?" The air was filled with a strong smell of alcohol, and the floor was stained with vomit. Even if the master's family cleaned it up in time, there was still a sour smell. Poplar Fruit was pulled by Kiki's clothes. Her urging voice rose and fell in his ears. He reluctantly looked at the big plate of pork and quickly took 2 more bites before regretfully putting down his chopsticks. "I'll take her back first." "Here?" Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki and gestured to the master's son, Xiong-Jishu, who had been accompanying him. It's okay. You go back first." Xiong-Jishu waved his hand and said with a smile, "We'll clean up here. Later, your friends will also be sent back to sleep. Don't worry." Poplar Fruit nodded at him and took his daughter back. On the way, Kiki yawned. She was a little sleepy. However, Kiki still hugged her father's neck and said, "Today Sister Xiaolin and Kiki went to see Pleasant Goat. At noon Goldie and brother Xiaofeng fought. Those uncles were so smelly." The little fellow liked to share her day's experiences with her father. Although there were many trivial things and many Poplar Fruit knew, Poplar Fruit was very patient and interested in listening to Kiki's narration. In fact, from Kiki's point of view and her naive understanding, many small stories were transformed into the warm laughter of a daughter and her father. The next day, Xiongkahu didn't wake up early again. Poplar Fruit went to his master's house to ask. There was no problem. It was just that after getting drunk, the old man couldn't take it anymore and slept for 2 more hours. On the other hand, the people from the special forces woke up very early and didn't suffer from hangovers. They took a cold shower early in the morning and were full of energy again. On the other hand, Fat Dragon and Kai Simin, who drank the least, were still unconscious in the room. They slept like pigs. This was the first time that Fat Dragon could continue to sleep after 7 o'clock in the morning. Left kick. Poplar Fruit called softly. Screech. Chi-Chi's cry sounded like it was real. Wrong. Poplar Fruit smiled and stopped. He came to his daughter's side and instructed. This is the left leg. You kicked the right leg just now. Kiki blinked her big watery eyes and looked at her father's demonstration seriously. Then she also lifted her left leg and kicked twice. Not bad. You've improved. Poplar Fruit smiled and applauded. After hearing her father's praise, Kiki practiced even more vigorously. She shouted valiantly and swung her fists and legs at the same time. Chapter 622. Poplar Fruit, let's have a go. Hiwunjua shook his head as he watched Poplar Fruit and Kiki practicing soft children's martial arts. He waited until Poplar Fruit and the others finished before he walked up. What? I should be the one to practice with Poplar Fruit. Meng Sanhua had been itching for a fight. He ran in front of Hiwunjua and cut in line. Hey, martial maniac Meng, first come first serve, don't you understand? Hiwunjua patted Meng Sanhua's shoulder unhappily and motioned him to stand aside. You're not following the rules. Go do 100 push-ups next to me. Meng Sanhua did not flinch at all. He smiled and said, Hee, Captain, we're not in the army now. Do you think I can't control you when we're not in the army? Hiwunjua glared and said angrily. You have to be able to beat Poplar Fruit first. Meng Sanhua said unhappily. I let you go first, but you can't beat him. Aren't you asking for trouble? I can't beat him, but you can. Hiwunjua said unhappily. Didn't you get beaten up last time? You're the pot calling the kettle black. How can I lose every time? Meng Sanhua rolled up his sleeves and said, Captain, you've seen it. Every time I go back, I sum up my experience and practice hard. A scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. I haven't seen you for 2 months and I've improved a lot. This time, it's hard to say who will win. Isn't that what you say every time? Hiwunjua sneered. You still get beaten up in the end, don't you? The two were arguing over the order. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and went up to stop them. Hey, that's enough. Brothers, don't argue. What's there to argue about? Big brother, he came early. I'll walk 2 rounds with him first, and then fight with brother Sanhua. Don't worry. As long as you have time, you can use me as a punching bag. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Poplar Fruit, don't you want to send your daughter back? Meng Sanhua did not insist. He walked to the side and made room for Poplar Fruit and Hiwunjua. Seeing Kiki holding her milk bottle and blinking her eyes, Meng Sanhua asked curiously. According to his understanding, although it was just a show of kung fu, it was still a real fight. It might not be as fresh as the fighting scenes in the movies. Anyway, it was not good to let the children see a fight, right? Yanghua turned around and looked down at her daughter. Chi-Chi looked at her father. She loosened her mouth that was biting the pacifier, shook her head and said crisply, Papa, I want to see. You're a kid. Don't watch it. Meng Sanhua seemed to be jealous because Kiki exposed that he was defeated by Poplar Fruit. He smiled and walked over to pick up Kiki. Go play with the other children. I'll buy you some candy later. I don't believe you. Kiki stuck her tongue out at him and made a face. Then she turned around and ran out of Meng Sanhua's reach. Just now, when Yanghua was teaching Chi-Chi martial arts, there were a few children from the Hmong Stockade village who were looking at them in a daze. Chi-Chi immediately went to their side. There was also a particularly attentive little boy, who brought a small stool from the house for Chi-Chi. The others didn't like cleanliness like Chi-Chi, so they just sat cross-legged on the ground. Kiki, take your brother and sister to sit away. Don't get too close. Poplar Fruit did not drive his daughter away. He did not think it was a big deal. Instead, he kindly asked Kiki and the others to sit away from the place that might be affected. There's a little audience. It seems that I have to be more serious today. Hiwunjua laughed. I can't lose too badly. He knew that he could not beat Poplar Fruit, so he did not say that he would definitely win. However, Hiwunjua said that he had to be more serious. In fact, every time he fought with Poplar Fruit, he was 100% focused. Hyunjwa took a step back with his right leg, then clenched his fists and raised them slightly below his chin. He assumed a classic fighting stance and looked at Yonggwa with a solemn expression. Meng Sanhua shook his head and looked at his watch. He muttered, 30 seconds. Meng Sanhua had overestimated Hyunjwa. Poplar Fruit was getting stronger and stronger. Hyunjwa was hit by Poplar Fruit's right leg in 10 seconds. If Poplar Fruit did not save some strength in the second punch and supported Hyunjwa, Hyunjwa would have been put down cleanly. Hyunjwa struggled for a bit before cupping his hands and admitting defeat in the end. Hyunjwa didn't ask for anything else, since he wasn't defeated too badly by a one-hit KO. What are you looking at? I guarantee that you won't be any better. Hyunjwa was very dissatisfied with Meng Sanhua's mocking expression. He snorted at Meng Sanhua and walked out of the field. Mr. Yang is so good. A group of Hmong village children who did not know anything applauded. This is my papa. Kiki turned around and said proudly to her brothers and sisters. Meng Sanhua took Hyunjwa's place and walked into the field. He twisted his arm and suddenly turned over like a swallow. His right leg swung in the air and smashed heavily on the blue stone of the village, creating a layer of dust. This guy did not forget to play cool even when he was warming up. Wow! The surrounding children exclaimed. Even Xiong Jisher, the best kung fu practitioner of the younger generation in Xiong village, was surprised. Hyunjwa's kung fu was not bad. He was a master of firearms and a master tactician. He could fight with ordinary soldiers. But in the eyes of a real expert, his kung fu was mediocre. Meng Sanhua, on the other hand, was different. Not only was his kick flashy, it was also fast and powerful. It was not something an ordinary person could do. Xiong Jisher could tell how good Meng Sanhua was as soon as he made a move. He must be a master. Meng Sanhua's performance later confirmed his guess. Ho ho ho! Meng Sanhua shouted hurriedly. Following his rhythm was his thigh, which was like the legendary shadowless kick. It was so fast that it turned into a shadow in the eyes of the audience. Bang bang bang! Each of Meng Sanhua's kicks landed on Poplar Fruit's palm. The hard leg bones and the fleshy palm made the sound of a stick hitting leather. Xiong Jisher watched seriously. He felt that if he were in Meng Sanhua's place, he would not be able to withstand Meng Sanhua's powerful kicks. He would be defeated within 2 moves. It was not that he wanted to be beaten, but Meng Sanhua's kicks were too fast. Even if he faced them, he would not be able to dodge them. Of course, the premise was that both of them were barehanded. If he had a Miaodao, Xiong Jisher felt that even 2 Meng Sanhuos would not be his match. That was also nonsense. A body of flesh and blood would definitely not be able to withstand a sharp blade. Please vote for me. Please recommend me. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 623. For the past 2 months, Meng Sanhua had been thinking about how to deal with Poplar Fruit. His strength was far inferior to Poplar Fruit's, and his Tan Tue might not be able to beat Poplar Fruit's Taiji Fist in terms of moves. The only thing he thought he had a chance of winning was the speed of his kicks. 8 Steps Meteor Kick was not as good as Tan Tue in terms of training methods. Poplar Fruit might be considered someone who knew leg techniques, but he was still a little weaker than Meng Sanhua. Therefore Meng Sanhua took the initiative to attack, forcing Poplar Fruit to follow his pace. If Poplar Fruit remained passive and defenseless, Meng Sanhua believed he would be able to find a flaw in Poplar Fruit's defense. Only Meng Sanhua would use Mind's Eye when sparring with a friend. It was not that he was competitive, but he had always believed that there should be differences in martial arts. There was no such thing as a tie. How could there be a difference? You lose and I win. Or to put it more extreme, you die and I live. This saying was especially applicable on the battlefield. War was cruel, and there was no right or wrong. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. If you wanted to live, you had to kill your opponent first. Therefore, no matter what moves you used on the battlefield, it was not despicable to stab your opponent's eyes in the crotch. Killing your opponent was the way to go. Meng Sanhua applied this principle to real life. Of course, he would not stab his opponent's eyes in the crotch. However, he was willing to use some psychological tactics to win the competition. Sometimes he went overboard. For example, Right now he was very fierce towards Poplar Fruit, as if he wanted to overwhelm his opponent with his aura. That's too much. Wenjue had spent a lot of time with Meng Sanhua, and knew what he was thinking. However, there was a group of children nearby. He hesitated and reminded him. At this moment, Meng Sanhua was immersed in the world of martial arts and could not hear what Wenjue was saying. Unknowingly, Big Bear, Bear 2, and Bear 3 had woken up. Together with Yin Luqing, who had her arms crossed, they stood upstairs to watch the match between Poplar Fruit and Meng Sanhua. If Meng Sanhua had made progress, how could Poplar Fruit remain stagnant? Just as Meng Sanhua thought, he was caught off guard by the unexpected attack. Poplar Fruit lacked combat experience. He had never seen a friend like Meng Sanhua, who attacked without greeting. His kicks were like a storm. Meng Sanhua thought that other than this reason, his pretense of being aggressive also worked. However, he was really thinking too much. Poplar Fruit was a man who was indifferent to Xiongkehu's murderous aura. How could he be frightened by a child's play? Poplar Fruit saw Meng Sanhua's grin, and wondered why he was so enthusiastic. Come on, Papa. Come on. Kiki's soft cheers came from behind. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, didn't have the eyesight to see who was better and who was worse. She simply felt that she should call out to her father at this time. Yes, Papa, fighting. Meng Sanhua could not hear anything at this moment. In his eyes, the world was black and white. Only Poplar Fruit, who was twisting left and right, was alive and the only existence in front of him. He was the kind of person who became more and more excited the more he fought. He felt that he had a great advantage against Poplar Fruit, which stimulated his competitive spirit. He felt that all the cells in his body were violently trembling, cheering, and looking forward to victory. No need to wait. I'll beat you. Meng Sanhua's eyes lit up. He had made another breakthrough in the fight. The obvious sign was that his leg speed had increased again, and his strength had increased a lot. It's okay. It's still acceptable. If Meng Sanhua could hear Poplar Fruit's thoughts, he might have spat out blood. How could it be okay? After the initial uncomfortable period, Poplar Fruit felt that he could handle it with ease. Although Meng Sanhua's leg speed was fast, Poplar Fruit's reaction speed was faster. In his eyes, Meng Sanhua was like a slow-motion movie that was slightly sped up. He could see the trajectory of Meng Sanhua's leg, and easily slapped it away with his palm. Hearing his daughter's cry, Poplar Fruit did not turn his head, but he was happy. His daughter was not bad. She even knew how to support her father. Well, since his daughter had expressed her support, he could not be so embarrassed. At least, the counterattack had begun. Poplar Fruit suddenly withdrew his hands that had been blocking. He lowered his shoulders, bent his waist, and raised his head to dodge Meng Sanhua's right leg. Meng Sanhua reacted quickly. His right leg stopped in midair for a third of a second, and then suddenly chopped down. The hard heel hit Poplar Fruit's shoulder. Yang had already guessed it. He exerted force on his waist and maintained his dodging posture. Strangely, he did a 180-degree lateral roll in the air. His head was up, and his legs that were on the ground also flipped into the air. Meng Sanhua's leg was just dodged by Poplar Fruit, and he landed heavily on the ground. Poplar Fruit pressed his hands on the ground, and did another 180-degree flip. He easily flipped over and stood up. This time, Poplar Fruit would not give Meng Sanhua a chance to attack. As soon as he stood up, he swept his leg over with the top of his foot, as if he was kicking a soccer ball. Meng Sanhua had just stood up when Poplar Fruit's leg came. He did not have the same reaction speed as Poplar Fruit, so he had to raise his hands and take Poplar Fruit's kick. F***ck. Meng Sanhua felt a huge force on his arm. He could not take it and had to take 2 steps back. For the sake of their friendship, Yanghua only hit Meng Sanhua across the mountain. Meng Sanhua was bounced back by Yanggua's strength. He didn't use his leg to meet force with force. Otherwise, Meng Sanhua's arm would have been broken. Before Meng Sanhua could regain his balance, Poplar Fruit pounced on him and wrapped his right arm around Meng Sanhua's neck. Then he sneakily stuck one foot behind Meng Sanhua and threw him to the ground in a wrestling position. Meng Sanhua was thrown to the ground by Poplar Fruit before he could react. KO. Lost again. Meng Sanhua closed his eyes, not because of the pain, but because he regretted losing to Poplar Fruit again. Poplar Fruit knew that the guy was fine. He pulled Meng Sanhua up from the ground, and then turned around to accept the cheers of Kiki and her friends. The kids were so excited that they screamed as if they had defeated a great demon. In fact, Poplar Fruit's finishing move was a bit too fancy. There was no need to wrestle. Just like Meng Sanhua's opening move, he was just acting cool. Please give me your monthly votes. Please recommend me. Greater than over equal to asterisk. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.